don't have six.
Okay, I think I posted that in the group somewhere. All
Yeah.
right. So we are in ARC Book Club 8, and we sort of started our pre-conversation talking about, the problem with shorts. And, I'll admit, like, my thinking initially on that subject was, well, at least it's something. But you're right. Like, what's the actual conversion rate? I don't know into
Not
investigating.
that little, that
Right.
much, that much maybe if you're lucky.
Right. So you were saying some really amazing things that I think we should be recorded for posterity. So like, yeah. What are your concerns with the sort of shorts aspect of getting the word out on natural law?
I think it's too much time to do it for such little impact, and it'll amount to nothing. And I was saying before that the conversion rate isn't really worth it. The only worth you get out of it is if you've got a million clicks on a short that you did because you called out the pedophile Satanist or whatever, they watched that 30-second clip, whatever it is, and you got a billion clicks on it. Then you've got the only worth you get out of that is whatever monetization that might be taking place with that. And you get a little bit of financial support with that. But really, in reality, people who like do nothing but scroll and watch clicks are not going to go and take the time to click on the link and watch the, say, 4-hour seminar that actually explains why you're saying that to begin with. And all the comments amount to things like emojis and LOLs and, trolls and people who are like, it just doesn't amount to much unless, you get some money from it. And then that's all that it's worth. Because the people who are scrolling and watching through TikTok videos or whatever videos, I mean, they're just like children. It's not, it doesn't amount to anything. And like, they're going to watch that clip and then they're going to go to the next clip, which is going to be like a cat clip, something like a kitty cat clip, which is always funny because it's just campy and fun. And then they're going to go, oh, look at that. It thinks it's people, and then, it's just, it doesn't amount to anything if the like 500,000 people who click on your TikTok or whatever short, whatever platform it is, it doesn't matter. If that 500,000 people doesn't translate to even at least a fourth of that population going over to the main work and putting real study into a subject, it doesn't mean anything then. It's a waste of energy and time. And, people are like, oh, AI can do all that stuff. And I'm like, that's fine. And I'm not saying AI is bad. I've used AI for this or that, some images to back up some of my research, to double check some of my work. I mean, that's what AI would really, I can only think AI can really be used for if you're using it as a adult and not like a child, instead of saying, I'm going to make this GIF of whatever shit, I don't even know what people are doing on AI. Like, it just,
Right.
it doesn't make any sense to me why people would waste so much energy on it or on shorts or on all this stuff when they could be putting that work into something that might actually stand the test of time. And shorts on TikTok or any other platform, it ain't going to do that. It's here and it's gone. Forgettable. In one ear, out the other, doesn't matter. I mean, it's not going to be lasting. And like, it's just such, I couldn't even imagine putting all kinds of time into making that. I don't even know how people make them. Like, I don't have a fancy phone. One of the phones that I have is like kind of broken, and I don't even get all my calls or any, it's just kind of broken. And the other phone I have, which I don't use all the time, is a flip phone. which I know that's antiquated and everything. I wish I had a better phone. But I think people are making them like on their phone because they have super fancy phones and everything. It feels like instead of putting a lot like attention goes, or how do you say it?
The mind goes where attention goes.
It's energy goes where attention goes. I think that's how the old saying is said. You
want to share your screen?
Hold on.
While you're doing that, I'll try to send a class recording to a classmate here.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I had it right. Tension goes where energy goes. So there's like actually an old saying, but it's the principle of focus and intention, which is right. And here I am using AI the way adults use AI to back up what I think I remember. So, and it's useful for me because I've got issues with some brain fog and stuff like that. So that's what it's good for. So the idea is that when you put attention into something, that's where all of the energy, all of the, all of your focus is going to be at. That's why people who are like split off and, got 18 billion projects never really get anything done because their attention is split in all these different ways. And what does it benefit them? Like, it doesn't benefit people in any way unless they've got a team of people actually helping them to accomplish these goals. But it's just like, why not, instead of putting all kinds of energy into doing shorts and, all these like little things that helps people to hear about the work or hear about this or that, and all these little things that don't really amount to much, because it doesn't matter if those people who pay attention to those little things don't go to the big thing. It doesn't amount to anything. They don't care enough. They don't care to go to step 2. They don't care to go to the next level of that. They're just like, oh, cool. Yeah, right. Freaking Hollywood pedophiles. Fuck them. Swipe. Oh, look at this kitty cat video. Oh, I love it. It's so cute. Swipe. Oh my God, this guy. I can't believe he said that to his girlfriend. It's like that. Like, that's what this is. It's just scrolling. And it doesn't mean anything. Like, so my gripe is, instead of putting your energy into things like small little, oh, how will I get people to pay attention to this or that? Take all that energy and that focus and produce something that stands the test of time. Like Brandon Martin's work, Brandon Spencer's work, Mark Passio's work, all these guys, they have stuff out there that's always going to be out there, because it's not just in digital form, which, as long as we have the internet, that shit's always going to be there, and even if off internet, a lot of that digital work is off the internet as well. People have copies of it. People have physical items of it, like CDs or DVDs and all kinds of doodads where you can like plug it into a tablet and watch it offline or whatever it is. Thousands and thousands of digital books that you can read offline that you don't need the internet for. But if the shit really hits the fan and it just all goes to hell because AI took over the whole goddamn planet, and now it doesn't matter that there's a parasite pedophile class. Now we have an AI overlord class, and it's freaking Logan's Run over here, and we don't even know that the president of our community is an AI program. Like, I mean, anybody ever seen Logan's Run? That's like what that whole society is. And nobody really notices that. They're just like, oh, there was like a hierarchy and a council and da da da. You know, like what the people are told there is not the same. Like, if you really look at it in Logan's Run, that movie, their entire civilization is ran by an AI program that was designed and then left on its own and then left in charge. And then a few generations later, nobody remembered it. Nobody remembered that happened. Wow. That's what Logan's Run is. That's the world in Logan's Run. And it's entirely ran by an AI program. I mean, it's if people don't figure it out, I'm not saying AI is bad. I'm saying it shouldn't have the capability of like developing into this big thing and left alone. Because all it takes is one generation and you're like, what are you talking about? We've always had AI forever and ever and ever. I mean, just like, 19-year-old kids who are out there will be confused because they just assumed that we all had smartphones when we were their age.
Wow.
I've talked to 19-year-old kids who think this. They just assumed we all had smartphones in the early 90s.
Wow.
And in the 80s. And I'm like, no, that's like brand new. Why do you think your like mom can't figure out how to use it or what to do, or she just clicks on every fucking thing and now she thinks everything's a virus? It's
so funny.
I know people who think that their servers, like if you go into your email, it's like on an outside server, like it's not stored in your phone.
Right.
I know people who think that their email and all their emails and all the stuff and like how the whole program is inside their computer. And that's what slows their computer down. So if they delete all their emails, then their computer will start to run.
I used to think that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you don't think that now.
Yeah.
But there are people who think that. Like, I mean, usually it's people who are like 80, but.
No comment.
I don't say that to be disparaging to people. Like, I think everybody should, like, it's okay to learn. I mean, but it's like, it's stuff like that. And then people are like, oh, let's make TikTok videos or Snapchat or whatever the hell it is. And I just don't see it as a benefit. And then like now there's people my age who can't even process anything. And it makes me even sadder because they're not people who are like mentally handicapped. They're not people who started out like that. They're totally normal, but they're on all kinds of fucking pharmaceuticals and drugs that it like fucked up how their brain functions. And, everybody's mad that, like, why can't you just get morality and natural law? And, like, why can't you just get, the state of the world? Why can't you, like, get out of your brainwashing? It's like they've been taking this antidepressant for, like, 20 years. You think their brain functions normally?
I mean, yeah, like, literally it turns you into a sociopath. Like, it makes you just,
it changes, like, drugs like that can change the actual functionality of your brain. Like the stuff that sparks in our brains when it's active, when you are on things like mood stabilizers, antipsychotics, even antidepressants, like even anti-anxiety medicine. And they won't study this because God forbid they stop making as much money as they do, but they just won't, but this stuff is proven where you could put somebody's head in a CAT scan from before and after, and those sparks in their brain fire completely differently. They're not the same person, and their brain doesn't have the same functionality.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. And of course they're not going to get it. Of course they're not going to learn. They're never going to be able to crawl out of that hole. And things like shorts, TikTok videos, and all those kind of things, they encourage, like, and it's a feel good instant gratification model. Oh, I feel good that I watched this little 30-second clip, and now I'm aware of the Hollywood pedophiles, and I feel good about that. Swipe.
Right.
On to the next outrage material, where I will do nothing about it or learn anything further past that. I'm just going to go onto Facebook and say, adrenochrome, I know about adrenochrome. Just like, it's shit like that. And then people are mad that nobody learns anything. Like, what makes you think anybody can learn anything when they've been taking some kind of antidepressants or anxiety medication or whatever it is that they're taking for the last 20 years? Huh?
Birth control also?
Birth control? I'm like really allergic to birth control. I've never been able to take birth control. I don't know how people take birth control. Like, that shit is like, I took like 5 millimeters of like the lowest dose I could possibly take, like, years ago. It was like the lowest dose they could give me. And I was like sick in bed for like a day. Like, everything's spent, like, whatever it is, like, it might be an extreme reaction, but I don't know if probably most people don't get that reaction. But like, I mean, that stuff gets into your system and it doesn't necessarily go away. Sometimes a lot of this stuff stacks. Even like stuff like antibiotics. Antibiotics stack in your system and they don't necessarily go away. You don't just detoxify shit automatically. Not everything. It doesn't work like that. Stuff like vitamins, oh yeah, your body will flush a lot of that shit out. But there's a lot of stuff like antibiotics and mood stabilizers, antipsychotics, things like that. That kind of shit will stack. And if you stop taking it, your body will go into like certain kinds of reaction modes and it'll stop working. But that doesn't mean that the stuff that you took is gone out of your body. Just because you stop taking a drug and it doesn't work in your body anymore, or if you stop taking it because it doesn't work anymore and you upgrade to some other new drug, that doesn't mean that the stuff that was in that drug just isn't in your body anymore. It causes damage. There's this thing that causes internal scarring that can take place. So when you take drugs, you can actually, it messes up like whatever it's targeting, whether it's the brain or the lungs or the pancreas or whatever it is. You can scar up you bruise them, they become more sensitive, they become easier to, become damaged when you're on a lot of pharmaceuticals and stuff. You can scar them and they become scarred, that damages them, and that shit is permanent. I mean, it's just, and they think people are going to learn shit. Oh, well, let's make another short. They're going to wake up. Not with that kind of damage being taken place in people. So this is why I don't like shorts. I don't really care if people do it and they're like, yeah, well, it brings me in like $1,000 a month. I'm like, awesome. As long as you understand you're doing it because you're getting paid $1,000 a month, not because you're waking up this asshole who like accepts accepts whatever you say and then scrolls on to the next, cat video. Like, I mean, don't do it. It's like understanding the difference between, like, for instance, like the fashion industry, where we get our clothes, like Walmart or Target or Sears or Gap or Zara or whatever people do. And they think when they buy like Macy's. They think when they buy, you know, more expensive clothes that they're getting better quality clothes and that they're getting clothes that are more ethically made. They're all coming from the same child, like basically child slave labor country, third world countries that are dishing that shit out. Like, and like that, they think there's differences and there's not any differences. So like, I don't know, like, it's just something that I guess irritates me, and most people don't care about that, but it does, like, that's why I don't really bother with it. I would rather spend the time producing writing and books, like the entire archive of the Ark that can stand the test of time, a book that you produce that can stand the test of time. I mean, like, in think about it. Think about when Leonardo da Vinci was alive. This was in the 1700s. We still have books and his manuscripts and his artwork and his science books that he wrote, his botany books, his engineering books. We still have everything that he produced, almost everything that he produced from the 1700s. That's what lasts. This TikTok shorts, social media, that shit ain't gonna last. It's not gonna last. I mean, there might, you know, now with modern technology, and if we keep going up in technology, that's going to continue to rise, and there's always going to be some format of it. But, you know, I don't know, give it maybe even another 10 years, and Facebook's going to go the way of MySpace, where you can't. I've been trying to redo a MySpace page because I just think it would be funny. And they're like, no, what's MySpace?
Yeah, we should probably define what that is for the younger generations watching this.
MySpace is an older social media platform. I don't know, maybe it's the first one. I don't know. But like Friendster. Now,
remember Friendster? I think Friendster preceded.
Friendster. Oh my God, yeah. Another social media platform that didn't last. Here and gone again, just like MySpace. And I had a MySpace page, and I can't remember what the stuff is. They probably deleted the account by now. It's been so many years, but I was trying to redo a MySpace account, like open up a new one, and they won't let me confirm it. Like, I signed up and everything, but they won't send the email that confirms the account, so I can't use it, which is so dumb. I don't even know if there are people operating MySpace anymore. But give it another 10 years and Facebook is going to go the way of MySpace, and it's going to be just like that. And you're going to have a whole generation of people who think that people who are using Facebook today is like for old people, which I guess technically kind of is. Yeah. And that's going to be the same thing with TikTok, with, you know, the one thing that might actually last actually is Twitter or X, whatever they call it.
Right.
So X might actually be what lasts because it's got a cleaner, less intrusive and more controllable environment. So like you can, like, it's not even the same. Like with Facebook, you can't get rid of ads. You can't get rid of shit you don't want to see. And
right.
Like I go on Facebook and I'm constantly like just blocking stuff or saying, hide this, don't, I just don't care. And it, like, I can't see anything because it's just too much bullshit. But X isn't like that. Twitter's a lot different, I think. And then you can say whatever you want and no one's going to go, oh, block you. I'm going to report you to freaking the boss. You know, like,
wow.
Like, they don't do that. Like, they're not doing that anymore like they were.
Right.
There was a big censorship problem on Twitter. And then that's one thing that, you know, I can appreciate Elon Musk for, because he's like, I'm not going to censor anything. And then he fired all the assholes who were censoring people. He fired like 80% of that company. And everyone was like, and he was nice to them. He gave them like, money so that they could live and find a new job. I mean, he wasn't just like, fuck off. That was like nice of him. He didn't have to do that because they were breaking the law. They were technically, by man's law, what the laws we have in this country that men instilled, they were federally breaking the law. Like, it was fraudulent what they were doing, censoring people and then like gaslighting people and then putting up shit that wasn't true. Like, the people who were working in Twitter, who they were doing that.
Right.
So he fired like 80% of them, and all these people were like, how can you do that? And can you run the company with just like 20%? And he's like, apparently you don't need that many people to run a social media platform. Like 1,000 people would do it. It's just, you don't need that many people. Apparently he's running it, and now he's making more money than Twitter ever made. Because it's just,
yeah. I started an X account for this reason, because like I felt like I get that people are using Facebook, Insta, and like maybe I'll do Insta, but like I just can't bring I get that that's where the masses are at, but like I'm hoping to get. Well, and going back to what you were saying about shorts, like I think you make good points, and I'm not, I think the sort of True Media Hub initiative is twofold. Obviously, there's the conversion rate problem that you mentioned, what actual percentage, it's probably going to be small, get converted to watching the 9-hour, seminar on natural law by Mark Passio. Like probably, like, I imagine a handful. Right.
Like one guy. There's going to be one guy out of that 500,000 be like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I should look into this. One guy. One. I'll be generous and call it one.
And I think you also make a good point. Like we're appealing to the 51%. We're not appealing to everybody. So like probably the type of person who's into shorts is probably going to be part of that 49%. That like we're not going to be able to reach, even though we're making content for them.
I don't even know if we can reach a lot of the 51%.
So yeah, and I think also like in my podcasting journey, like I started off, doing interviews with students, but like I've sort of this year have been more mindful about like I think we should start with health, like just getting off these, like you said, these pharmaceuticals, the vaccines, and just getting our physical vessel right to receive the information. Because if your attention span is shit, you're not going to be able to literally pay attention to a 9-hour seminar. Like,
I mean,
people attention first, in order.
And I can attest to that. Like, not just have I known I've met hundreds of people who are patients and work in the medical world and are chronic patients. And I know so many people who tell me the exact same problem. It's always the same complaints. And that's always what it is. It's like brain fog. And when you are in a position where like the only option you have is the pharmaceutical world, because they own everything. Yeah. They own everything. And then because you're in that position and you kind of have to go down that path, like there's consequences to that. And the consequences are that your body becomes dysfunctional. Yeah, like I've spent most of my life and like the people who worked on me, they're not trying to be evil. They're not trying to be malicious. They're doing what they think they can do in order to keep me alive. They're making these drugs that work and don't work. They do lung transplants. They're doing what they think is possible. And it is possible. And sometimes it works. And I get treatment that works. And it's all like corrosive pharmaceutical drugs that do work. And maintenance, not cure, not get you better. You don't feel better afterwards. They don't cure you. You're not, going back to normal. That's like not how it works. It's like when you're like kind of fucked up in your body, the only thing you can do is maintenance. It's all maintenance. So, and luckily that maintenance doesn't deteriorate so that you get worse. And that's like how it works. And then you have people, and when you have people who are in positions like that, their body's fucked up somehow, the majority of those people, because they don't have their house in order, they don't have their thoughts, emotions, and actions straight, all of this shit's all over the fucking place, and they don't have an emotional adult understanding about reality, about themselves, and about how everything is a trigger emotional response. Everything is a fear-based response all the time for people in that position. So when you're in that position, the majority of people are going to be like, oh, well, my body is so fucked up and I can't be functional and nothing's ever functional and it's just pain all the time. And this organ's shutting down and now I have another infection with this. And now I might have to get a transplant for this. And it's just all the time. And it's all the time. And it doesn't stop. And there's no breaks. So because of this, and because people don't have their house in order, it wears down on the soul. It wears down on the spirit. And people become desperate. Emotionally and spiritually desperate. That leads them down the path of atheism. It leads them down the path of materialism, and they feel like they have to be on that path, because if they're not, and they don't reject God, because why would God do this shit to people? If they don't go down that path and they feel like they're not going to get any real treatment, because they have to make justifications and they have to go along to get any kind of care. And then they get depressed and sad. They become spiritually beaten and just ruined. And then what happens next? Oh, I'm anxious. I'm anxious because I'm self-conscious, because now I think everybody knows and they're watching me. They're just always staring at me because they think I'm a freak, because I'm sick in the eyes of society. So they treat me like I'm a sideshow. And I'm saying this generally, not me. Generally, this is the mode of, like, if people were being honest with themselves, this is how they are. This is what happens to them. This behavior. So I'm anxious. So their asshole GP gives them, or PCP, as they like to call now, like, very fancy. Like, stop changing the words, guys. We don't care. We'll be like, oh, well, here you go. Take some anti-anxiety medication. Here's a script for whatever. And this should make you feel better. And then when that doesn't make them feel better, because their body is just shit all the time, and they feel like shit all the time, and the world is shitty, that doesn't clear up the anxiety issue. So they need more. So they get antidepressants, and they start going to therapists who are probably trained by fucking psychopaths. And then you've got if anybody's ever even looked at the handbook that psychiatrists use to diagnose mental illnesses, there's shit in there for everything. Like everything. And it's mostly crap. And it's just, so now they're depressed. They're a little depressed. Now they can't sleep at night because it's a burden. So they go on antidepressants. And then that doesn't work. So they up the dose. And then that doesn't work after a while, so they get a stronger antidepressant. And on it goes. And then 10 years later, magically, the doctor's like, you actually have undiagnosed bipolar disorder.
Wow.
And then they start giving these people who had no mental problems whatsoever to begin with bipolar medication, because somehow at 50 years old, they got misdiagnosed as bipolar. And there you go. Now you've got people scrolling, being mad about Hollywood pedophiles, scroll, going, yeah, I'm angry about that. Oh, I love this cat video. Oh, I can't believe that guy said that to his girlfriend. Oh, it's just quick, can't think, can't function, can't absorb anything, don't care. Reading makes them sleepy. So I'm going to emoji my way through every single comment. That's how I feel all the time about almost everyone. I guess that was more of a venting. So sorry, guys. That was way off the fucking.
Well, and I'm just so happy that you're part of this book club, because I just, we also, before we started recording, started talking about like just commitment on things, right? And how, I'm just going to say it because like, I think, part of my activation process was feeling bad and guilty about not acting. And from Mark's, work, especially his later podcasts, where, yeah, like if you truly understand in your heart the situation, the condition of humanity right now, like, why wouldn't you commit to our book club meetings? Why wouldn't you commit to that? I don't get it. I
just
don't
to anything, understand. Just to anything at all.
Yeah, and I get that like life happens, but like I'm just gonna say it, like I'm a single mom of two. I don't have consistent internet living space right now, and I'm in between careers in a way, and I still do the great work because I care, and I just make it fucking happen. I will it to happen because I fucking care. Like, where's people's care? I don't feel like people care enough.
Well, that's one of the things I hear is that I just don't have enough time to do things. Like, tell me about it. There ain't enough hours in the day. But I'm going to give you guys a tip. Anybody who watches this later, check this out. And I do it analog style. Imagine analog. Do you know the word analog? Use your AI fucking shit and go and say, hey, Copilot, define analog for me. And think, it'll give you a definition. See this?
Wow.
Guys, I hear you watching it. This is how you organize your fucking day. By writing that shit down in a book. Look, I'll even open it. Look, check that out. Oh my God, it's got the entire freaking month in there. Can you believe it?
Wow.
Look, it's got organized for notes. Look, there you go. This is like far in the future, so all I've got there is crosstalk on Wednesday. And
Aww.
Saturday and Sunday, no work, so fuck off, don't bother me days. There we go. See how I did that? Very easy. Oh, look,
there's the bothered you on those days, by the way. Sorry.
Huh?
I said I've bothered you on your fuck off days.
Oh no, I'm just not you. I'm not talking like you. I'm just saying like I'm just saying like this is like stop putting shit in your fucking phone to schedule everything. I mean, I know that works for some people, but dude, I actually did that. Like I put all the stuff. I'm not an idiot. I know how stuff works. I know how my phone works. I know how digital shit works. And I put my whole schedule in a digital calendar to make it easy, right? And just, not have to buy a planner or whatever. And I pressed it and I wanted to change one of the days that was like a group listing or whatever. And I changed it and the entire calendar cleared. And I spent a couple of hours doing that shit. I was fucking pissed.
That's so
So go and buy an analog notebook, a regular notebook that is a planner. I got that at Marshall's for like $9. It's not a huge expense. I mean, just write it down. It's not like a big deal. Like, I just don't understand like why. I don't know. I feel like people make things harder for themselves than it has to be. Like, I'm busy too. Like, I mean, I don't have a kid in my house anymore, but that doesn't mean my time isn't valuable. You know, and I got a pile of freaking sewing I got to do. And it's just, you just still, like, you can take a few hours out of your week to do something. Even if it's, say, an interview with somebody you want to talk to, and then you put it up. Like, I mean, Jerry, you do your interviews and they're like, it's, you know, the way you do it, and it's not a huge production, and you're still just doing it.
Right.
And that, like, mounts to something. I mean, and even if I've only got 3 hours a week to commit to this because I've got, you know, 8 kids and a full-time job, and I still have to, like, you know, take care of myself and take care of my family and take care of my spouse if I have one, and take care of my animals and give that attention to the life that I have so the quality of life I have doesn't go down. So I've got, like, say, 3 hours each week to put towards something that will stand the test of time. Whether that benefits me at all is irrelevant. Whether it takes me a year to do something tangible or 50 years to do something tangible also doesn't matter. There are people who spent an entire lifetime working on one book, and that's all they left behind. But it's that one book that is just the best book you've ever read. Because they spent 3 hours a week putting focus into it, not spreading yourself out. Attention goes where energy flows.
Yeah.
So, you know, it doesn't take a lot to do that. And I don't think people need to be, like, super creative, even like, I'm going to do it this way, I'm going to do it that way, and I'm going to come up with all kinds of things in ways that help. And it's all very, not that anybody's ideas are bad. It's just sometimes our ideas can be very short-lived because we have all this energy for it, but then it goes down because there's no support for it, or you kind of get tired of the idea and you don't feel as enthusiastic about it anymore. And it's what happens. Like, so to pick a thing, pick one thing, pick one and go from there. I mean, and that can be hard to rein in that kind of behavior. Like, cause I mean, I'm an artist. A lot of artists are on the flaky side, really kind of, you know, sometimes, and we will spread ourselves out because we get really excited about shit. And we just, like, we really just wanted to see it already created.
Yeah.
Which it trains us to just, we're halfway through a project and then we get not excited about it anymore because it's taken like a year to make it. And we're just, the excitement goes. So, like, even getting all worked up and excited really quickly and all the time doesn't really benefit us much because we lose steam, and it's a bad habit to have. It's like biting your nails. You got to break that habit. Like, when I stopped doing that kind of behavior, my focus went from this, like this, to that. And it took me understanding that I'm a scatterbrained lunatic who wants to see all of this cool shit happen. And then I just have to like let it go and focus on what I really want to do. And most people can't do that, but it's a skill you have to practice, like riding a bike or not biting your nails, because it's a habit that is bad for you. It's bad for your mind. It's bad for your soul. I mean, that's just my take on it, but
hey man, I love this shit. Again, this is not what we intended this book club meeting to be, but that's okay, because it feels like almost like a shadow work for great work podcasters. Because I'm relating to a lot of what you're saying. I mean, initially I kind of see myself as like wanting to be an activator for others, because I want that to happen, but I don't want to be the person spearheading it. So like, for example, like, hate to say it, like this book club, like I want it to be in existence, but like, I'm so glad that like you're as enthusiastic about it as me. This is what I'm talking about. This cat does not pay attention to me, but as soon as I start recording, it's like all up in my business. Anyway. But yeah, like I just find myself caring too much and getting excited too much and wanting things to happen too much. And I'm like, I'm helping with the True Media Hub. I got this. I'm trying to do the debate team. I'm starting a natural law school. I'm fucking, being a mom, homeschooling. Like I'm just juggling a lot. Like, and I don't like shower consistently. I don't eat consistently. Like I don't want to get burnt out. And I see myself doing that to myself, and I'm trying to just rein it in. I've been a little bit flakier on the student interviews. I'm just reprioritizing my time, because I'm realizing like I can't be everywhere all at once. Like I have the opposite problem. Like I think I cared, just too much. And I want these things to happen, but I don't necessarily, and I'm trying to like do a natural law music festival, that too.
So like, I think it would be beneficial if you, leave all this stuff open, but like, right. You don't, like you made the group, you did the effort, you put it out there for people to utilize, whether they do or not is now not something you have power over. Right. So because people have to be involved in things like that. So, I would step back even from most of that stuff, except for your kids, your personal health. Yeah. And because I can tell you, when you ignore your personal health, people are thinking, oh, I'm going to do it until I'm decrepit. And, I don't prioritize like eating and self-care and this kind of stuff. And that actually will affect your physical health. You can get sick. It can manifest physical illness. This kind of stuff builds. Again, it's a stacking issue, and it will happen. And I can attest to that personally. When you do not take care of yourself, you are not usable. You're not a functional human being, because you're too sick to be really functional. And I know this for a personal fact. Like, I've experienced this. And I've had regrets in my life. There's things I wish that never happened, but there's been moments of my life where I just was not able to function physically. I could not take care of myself. Wow. And it doesn't matter how smart you are or what your brain is capable of doing and understanding. Your brain can be fully operational, fully functional, fully capable, but your body will be like, no, I'm not getting out of bed today. We're not going to use our liver today. We're just going to like shut that down today. We're not going to, you're going to your lungs aren't going to work today. Like, it's just, your body will shut down. Like, I know that this happens. People don't want to believe me because they think it's not as big of a deal as it is. But when you can't even take care of yourself, you certainly can't take care of anybody else. Like, I had to like go through that with my kid, because I got to a point, and I won't go into the details. I mean, some of it's in my book, but I won't go into details here. But I got to a point where I had to understand that my body was completely shutting down. I was given 2 years to live at that point actually, I think it was 2008. They're like, really, we estimate you at 2 years to live and you'll be dead. Because your body is shutting down. And that's actually what it is when, sometimes people just die in their deathbed and, because of whatever, and it's very sudden. But usually when people are dying, it takes several years. Dying is not what people think it is. Sometimes people just die in freak accidents, and it's really fast, and thank God for that. But most people, when they're dying, it's a long, dragged out process. And people don't understand that as well, which is why they just can't even deal with it. They can't even talk about it. But anyway, I had to come to a conclusion that my body was shutting down. I couldn't function. I could barely move at one stage. And I was supposed to be able to take care of a 3-year-old child at that time. And people I did not get really any support from like family or anybody over this shit. They're just like, well, Sarah, why don't you just stay where you're at now? And, Emma will be taken care of, and spend that 2 years with Emma and, your daughter and all that. And I'm just like, like, you don't understand what this means. I could have made that choice, but then it's a 3-year-old watching their parent die. And what kind of person would I be if I did that? I don't think parents who do that they're like, I'm not going to judge them, but I don't think it's the right decision for a parent to make. Because it's not okay. It's not fun. It's traumatizing. She'd end up being a 20-year-old fucking wreck, my kid, because she has these like lingering, weird, half in, half out 3-year-old memories of watching her mother die. And that's like traumatizing shit. That's like the kind of shit you forget happens, and then you're all fucked up when you're an adult. And I didn't want to do that. So like I ended up her dad raised her for a few years while I went back to, and tried to get some actual health care. But outside of a socialized country, because that's what actually was killing me. I was in a socialized country and they fucking blow. Sorry, all you Americans who want it to be a socialized country, you're out of your fucking minds. So it's just like,
their argument is like, well, it's because it hasn't, we haven't done it right yet. All the other socialism experiments, they weren't quite perfect. They didn't quite get it right. We're going to get it right this time, is their thinking.
What were we talking about? I'm sorry. I got like...
well, this harrowing experience that you had in 2008.
Yeah. What I kind of forgot. I kind of got pissed off for a minute, so sorry.
Oh, yeah. We were talking about just basically like how important self-care and health is.
Right.
It's a fight. Yeah.
That's what got me on that. Self-care. When you don't pay attention to that. Like, okay. So I think where you're best, where you benefit, like doing your show, whenever you put up a show, working on your own self-care, focusing on that, and working on the school. And like, I think that stuff is the direction to go in. And all the other stuff is great and it's add on and it's extra and it's if I have some free time and but not to be taken seriously.
Right. Yeah.
You know, sometimes you just gotta let things go. And I had to learn how to do that. There was things I wanted to be a part of, how to let it go and realize that I can focus on this because I know I can be good at this and put energy into this and make it what it should be.
Totally.
You know, I can't make 20 different things what it should be. I can make one or two things what it should be.
I'm definitely like a big ideas person. Like I have so many and I don't, it's because I have so many and I want them all to manifest and happen. But it's like, if for them to happen, I need like teams. And the problem is people like don't care enough. So, and why don't they care enough? Well, we talked about that, you know, so it's like, it all just comes down to just the basics, just teaching people, you know, how to care.
Yeah, you need teams of people who will actually commit. And look at even like volunteering in work, looking at volunteering when you do something as a job instead of, oh, I'm volunteering it for something. So it's not like a big old deal or anything like that. But if people looked at like when I volunteer for something, I'm looking at it like it's a job because that shit is going in my CV. I'm going to add that shit to my portfolio as like something I've done, something that I've accomplished, something that's part of the hats that I have created. Like the portfolio I showed you the last day. Like that's, you know, experience. Like even sometimes all you're working for is experience. And then that leads to bigger things. That leads to better things for you because you looked at a volunteer position that you don't have to be there. You don't have to commit. There's no obligation. You're not getting paid. There's no pats on the back. There's no special gold stars. Nobody's getting a prize for that. It's just you are choosing to volunteer your time to work on something that might be bigger than you. And you may not even get credit for it. But you were part of the reason why, because you committed, because you put the energy into it, and you worked it like a job, like you're getting paid, then that's what helped it become the thing that it is. If it works out. Like, that's how people have to think of this stuff. Like, there's nothing wrong with volunteer work. I know people who that's all they do is volunteer work. And they work that shit like it's a job. Like, I'm going to my job today. And that's how they look at it. I've worked with people like that. When I was working with the center in Limerick in Ireland, most of the staff were volunteers from the community. They chose to be there. They were there the minute I opened, and they stayed until the minute we closed. They helped me clean. They helped me organize. They helped me move furniture around. They helped me stock stuff that we needed. I mean, they treated it like a job. And as a reward, in the end, they have a resume that gives them bigger and better opportunities for it. Because now they have employers who look at this person who spent 3 years at a volunteer job willingly, like it was their job. And they're like, this person knows how to actually commit and stay focused. And this person here, I can just tell by their CV alone that they actually know how to commit to something. And that they won't just be like a flake and treat it like, take it for granted that I give them a job. Right. That's like a thing. And people don't think like that.
Yeah, so, well, and that's a mind control, right? Like, oh, well, because I'm not getting paid, therefore I don't need to commit because it's not serious.
Right.
You know?
I mean, and they chose to be there. Nobody was under contract. Nobody, like, they knew, like, it's a small operation. They couldn't pay. I was a volunteer at that place for 2 years. And then I ended up being like a manager and operating. So it's just, and it was a small operation, you know, and it's just, it's stuff like that. And people just don't commit to stuff and they think it doesn't matter. And they think if it's free, then it doesn't matter and it doesn't have any value. You know, I don't know. People annoy me sometimes, but,
I think it's sort of a lack of care, to be honest, because like that's what drives me. It's like I just care so much, and like if you don't care, the will come. You will make it happen through the care. You know. I don't know. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think that people lose their capability of caring just because I honestly, I just think like having stuff like care is attached to empathy and it's attached to emotions. It's attached to will, you know, it's a concept. And I don't think people who have extensive amounts of brain damage, they don't have the functionality in their brain that, like, if you're something that you would normally care about, like when we like care about something, our brains like when we're like, oh, I love my kid, like I die for my kid, and you're genuine about it, your brain's going because there's all kinds of, you know, sparks and emotion, there's things happening, your brain's functioning. But if you're somebody who has brain damage for whatever reason, like psychopathy, like people who are emotionally triggered, like, you know, people that they call like Karens who just flip out because of whatever shit, those are heavily medicated women. Guaranteed. They are heavily medicated women.
At the very least, birth control.
People don't behave like that. They don't behave like that normally. That's not normal behavior. That is like the use of people being on antidepressants and mood stabilizers on and off for their whole life. Or just being on all kinds of pharmaceutical drugs their whole life because they had cancer. And they had all kinds of medical chemicals and medications and treatments and stuff that's just corrosive to the body. And that damaged their body. Or they had whatever other kind of dish for the last, you know, decades and decades of their life. That's not normal behavior. Those are heavily medicated women or damaged women because they spent 30, 40, 50 years of their life on medications that are, you know, yeah, it helped them. Now, you know, they're not dying technically anymore. They don't have cancer anymore, but it fucked up their body and their brain, and now it's all brain fog. And their bodies don't function the way they used to. But I mean, anyway, like people who don't have that, like in them, like that whole part of their body's been damaged, I don't think that they have the functionality to have care, really, because all of it's false emotion. Like women or people who put like all of their emotions into their little dog. Yeah, it's great to love your animals, take care of your animals. But when you act like your animal is a human being and you flip out every time somebody looks at your dog incorrectly, or you're doing things like, I don't know, like the crazy shit some of these people do with their animals. I'm like, I don't think your animal really wants to do that, but they're doing it to them anyway.
Right.
like I don't think animals like clothes.
Yeah.
Yeah, wearing their animals different colors, putting all kinds of clothes on them. I don't think animals like that. So, but they're doing it because they think it's cute. That is emotional defragmentation. That's not emotionally stable, I don't think. I mean, it's one thing if you have a hairless cat and you live in Canada, okay, put a sweater on the poor thing. They'll probably thank you for it. But it's just, it's like, use your discernment there. But like, it's just not healthy. So I don't think people who are born naturally a psychopath, because there is a genetic mutation that causes psychopathy. It's like 1% of the world's population is always going to be born psychopathic. That's always going to be that. And then you've got like, the up to 3%, which is the rest of them are like secondary psychopathy. And because they're trained to be psychopaths by other psychopaths. And then you've got the millions and millions and millions and millions of people who are sick all the time because food is poisoned, medicine is poisoned, water is poisoned, everything's poisoned, the air's poisoned, there's poison chemicals that we clean our house with, in our bath, all the things in our house with. In the Victorian era, they had lead paint. They had lead in almost everything. They painted everything with lead paint. And they were painting baby toys with lead paint and giving that to babies, and that shit absorbs into your skin. And like there's a whole history of dead children because of lead paint and toys that were given to them. It was in wallpaper. It was in clothes you wore. Like stuff like that. And there's all kinds of shit out in the environment that's poisoning us. And that stuff eventually is affecting people. And it makes them sick. And it makes them incapable of functioning normally. And like, if you take a pregnant woman, and that pregnant woman, even if she's a vegan, even if she's like super naturalist, super healthy, but she gets pregnant, what does she do? She goes to the GP. The GP gives her all kinds of, prenatal stuff, ultrasounds, all kinds of things, right? Say the vegan woman who's pregnant, I mean, I'm just saying that like, super healthy woman, right? Normally super healthy woman. And say also during their pregnancy, the woman has depression issues, like women who get pregnant, there's a lot of hormones and shit that's going on in your body because your body's changing because it's trying to put a human body together. So all kinds of crazy stuff goes on when you're pregnant, emotionally and spiritually and in your head, and hormones it's a physical thing that's going off. So you get depressed. So you get a little depressed. So your doctor goes, your doctor who you trust goes, oh, that's totally normal. Here, take this antidepressant while you're pregnant. This will help to smooth things over.
Right.
It'll make you calm. It'll make you feel better. It'll make you feel better while you're pregnant. And then you have a baby, and then you have birth to the baby, and everything looks fine. Up until the child starts to grow up and you start to realize that this kid's not quite right because he's cutting wings off butterflies. Shit like that. I mean, people don't think that stuff. They don't connect those kind of dots because they're like, no, it won't affect the baby. Even though in the same sentence, everything you consume affects the baby. Oh, but this antidepressant won't affect the baby.
Yeah.
And people just don't think about it. And they're like, and then you have other people like in, say, the True Seeker community, like, why can't you get it? Why don't you understand this? My mom decided to take like a heavy antidepressant for 9 months while I was developing in the womb. And now my brain isn't fully developed and never fully developed in the womb. So I can't think properly because I'm missing chunks out of my brain. I'm missing elements in my brain that allow it to function normally.
Yeah. Well, and you and I had an offline conversation about just like haters and stuff and like how to deal. And like at a certain level, like you can't take anything personally because like some of it may be due to like you're talking about just like brain damage through various environmental, medical toxins.
Yeah. Like that's why I don't really take any of it personally. I mean, like, sometimes I'm like, why did he say that? Oh my God, how could he even say that? And then I remember he's probably like that much, at least a little bit brain damaged. It's like, I can't help it. Even if it's not true, even if it's not the case for whoever it is, like, because I don't know the person, it's just where my head goes. Because I think of that side of it. I don't just think this person was brainwashed with poor parenting and media and government and religion and all this stuff. Like that stuff happens as well.
Right.
But when you don't develop in the womb a fully functional human body to begin with, you're going to be missing things that allow you to really fully take in everything. And it's the reason why I can't be a vegan. I can't be a vegan. I don't have certain things in my body. They did not develop. The elements just aren't there for me to be a vegan and be healthy because my body won't absorb certain things. It won't absorb normally. It won't digest things normally. It just won't do it. Right. Like I will drop weight like that. No problem. And that shit puts you in the hospital. Like I should be about, like, I was actually talking to Derek about this, like when I had my respiratory failure before, we were like I'm normally about 135, 140 in pounds if I'm healthy. That's a healthy level for me. I dropped to 108 in less than 2 months. And I was like eating almost nothing, but like I was trying to eat, like I was trying to eat all the time, but it was hard to eat. It's hard to eat when you're in that state, but I was forcing myself to eat, and your body doesn't function when you're in that kind of state properly. It doesn't function even more than that.
Yeah. So, we talked offline also about this, and, I think everyone's, just trying the best they can, I sometimes buy milk for my kids. They'll ask for ice cream. Like, I'm just, fuck it. I'm just going to buy them ice cream, and so it's just like, I think we're all, as long as we understand the morality of it and try the best we can to align, that's all that we can do,
Yeah, I think that's what anybody should really do is just do the best you can and like just put something out there, do what we can. Like I can't do a lot. I mean, I have a lot of time to sit around and research and do things, and I can watch podcast videos all day long while I sew. I mean, and like there's so much that people can do, and like for people to say that they don't have any time to do anything, or dare I say it, I can't do anything for like decades and decades and decades until it's so perfect that somebody out there that's like the leader of everybody is gonna think it's perfect. If I get a pat on the back from the people at the top, that's when it's perfect. It's like, dude, Like, they don't even want you to do that.
Right.
Like, they want you to just do something, anything. Doesn't have to be perfect. They've said it over and over. But again, people don't develop in the womb all the way.
So I feel like, and I know we share this view, I think it all starts with physical health, just getting that, making sure we can handle the care functionality first, to then educate for care and objective morality and stack. But if you need that foundation, and so that's basically why I've just naturally started, now that I'm doing sort of like a more curated podcasting series, less focused on interviews with students, although I still would love to do that. But just care, like starting with health. It's a little bit different from the way Mark starts his podcast, but I feel like health should be addressed first and foremost. Because if, like you said, if the hardware is not, you start with the hardware.
Yeah, the hardware got to function.
Yeah, go ahead.
You got to take care of the body. If you can take care of the body and you've got your body functioning, like, I'm not saying that these problems can't be fixed.
Right.
Like, they can be fixed. You just got to, like, stop enabling it. Like, stop taking the antidepressant because you're a little sad because we live in hell world. That is a totally normal response.
Totally, dude.
That's a normal response, to be like, this fucking sucks. Let me just hop on over to my doctor and have him give me like a freaking antipsychotic so I can shut my brain down because the world sucks. That's an excuse. It's an excuse for not taking personal responsibility for yourself. It's the easy way out. I could do that. Do you know how easy it would be for me to do nothing and be 100% just a pet of the state? Like, I mean, I don't like the position I'm in now. Like, I'm half in, half out of the system because they fucking own everything.
Yeah.
Like, because I'm not Elon Musk. I can't just buy my medication. I have to go through bullshit just to get something to maintenance my shit, which is all it's ever going to be. But I have at least spent the last 10 years at least pulling a lot of myself out of that system and finding alternates that work. And that takes a lot of personal responsibility, takes a lot of time. You can't just pull it all. It just doesn't work that way. And being a little bit anxious or depressed or sad or unhappy about hell world out there is a 100% normal reaction to that condition. And you shouldn't use it as something, I'm going to go and take drugs for it so I can quiet the shit down. You should use it as a sounding board and be like, well, that shit ain't going to affect my environment, and I'm going to do what I have to do to make sure at least my environment doesn't get fucked with too much. And once I have a handle on that, maybe I'll branch out and see what I can do about changing that condition in my community. And then go from there, and then there. And it's a pay-it-forward system that way. That way it's not too overwhelming for people where they think it's all black and white and they think, oh, well, it's got to be this or it's got to be that. There ain't no pulling anything. There ain't no pulling of any kind of system. It's not going to work. Just like a heroin junkie. Heroin junkies have to be weaned off of the heroin, and it takes time because you can pull heroin off somebody just like that really instantly and it'll kill them. Like people go into shock and they die from that because they die from the withdrawal. They die from the shock that is in their system. Like, I don't know if you've ever met anybody who's been in that position. I know a couple people, unfortunately. But like, you can't just drop something like that. I know people who are on pills, same thing. Like painkillers, it's the same problem. Antidepressants, antipsychotics, same problem. Can happen. Can happen with antibiotics. If you just stop taking a drug that you've taken for like 30 years and you just stop taking it, your body can go into shock. It can make you really sick. That's like a thing and nobody even knows about it.
Oh, dude, heavy shit. Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know if you've ever met anybody who's been in positions like that, but it's just ADHD medication, same shit, same kind of problem. I know people who were put on ADHD medication when they were like 11, and then 18 years old, their insurance stops covering them. Now they can't get it.
Wow.
As adults because they can't afford healthcare insurance. So what do they turn to? Street drugs, usually heroin. I know people that happened to. I'm like, and then people think that they're going to come out of the fog and just learn stuff like natural law. So.
Right. Well, and you kind of, it sucks because like if you're in that state, in basically an addict state, like a physical addiction state, right? It may not be a behavioral addiction, but it's a physical addiction in a way. Well, I guess it is behavioral. But yeah, like you have to sort of research how to wean yourself off and then what natural remedies to start and like the timing and, looking at the studies and the abstracts. And I mean, when you're in a brain fog, that's even harder to do. Like, so like,
you can't function. Like, I mean, and it's just as bad in the medical system, like not just with street drugs. It's just as bad. I have one friend, she had multiple failed surgeries.
What?
On something. And they failed. Like for whatever reason, it just didn't work out. And for her pain treatment, they gave her Oxycontin. And they gave that to her for a couple of years or whatever it was, like a year, whatever it was. And then because there's a cap on stuff like that, legally, they stopped giving it to her entirely. They didn't wean her off it. They didn't give her smaller doses of it. She was on a high dose. They didn't give her smaller doses of it. They didn't wean her off step by step, and she turned to heroin. And I hear stories like that all the time. And then I hear people talk about how they can't get people to learn anything. That it's all because of this. It's all because of that. It's all because of this. And I'm like, why not think about the root of the real problem, that this shit started in the womb? And it started like, dude, the parasite class doesn't have to brainwash us through media or anything else. Because now they can use bioweapons. Now they got bioweapons.
Right.
Like, and it's not just what they give pregnant women who are developing the baby. The baby gets born and they put it's like 70 or 80 vaccines into that baby almost immediately. No, that kid's going to grow up thinking the earth's flat. Watch. I'm just saying, like, it's...
You're so funny.
I'm not trying to be mean. It's just... Think about this stuff practically. And I know if people watch this later, they're going to be like, Sarah's insane and stupid. She doesn't know what she's talking about. I'm like, I'm just saying I I've heard countless stories of this kind of shit that goes on. People who tell me stuff, and they're like, they tell me the mishaps that happen when they have their baby, and the doctor fucked up and doesn't take responsibility for it. Now the baby's sick. Like crazy shit that you'd think would never happen, and it happens. And we think those people, can learn something in full, like a fool in fullness. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like it's hopeless. It's not. Of course it's not. But
Well, I think, it's good to be aware of what we're up against and be realistic about the situation, right? And like, a lot of what we're talking about reminds me, like, I kind of discovered this. I went down the rabbit hole via my interest in satanic ritual abuse, survivor stories, and just hearing about how, some of these like bloodline families will in the womb start electrocuting, just torturing in the womb. And, and then, the secret societies, they function by virtue of like money and blackmail. And it's like, why do we as sort of plebes outside of this top part of the pyramidal structure think we're any different? We're being bombarded in utero, as well. We're, having money dangled as a means of control as well. We're coerced into paying taxes, or else violence will come to us from the state, so like we're in a giant satanic ritual, like we're born into it. But to go back to the black pill thing, like there are people that have had the worst aspects of that system not only survive, but like show up on camera and like be beacons of light. Yeah. And that like, if they can do it as humans, so can we, right? Like they're an inspiration.
I fully agree. I'm not saying that condition can change, that cannot change. Like even people who've had that kind of medical abuse even in the womb, and even if they go their whole life, getting vaccines and, not really understanding this stuff. Like, I'm not saying that they can't change and that they can't come to that realization and like fully understand things, because like you can redevelop stuff. And I think there's an aspect to it, like people who are missing certain components that maybe they don't develop in the womb, that they can develop spiritually, even if they don't have it physically. So I do think that I personally consider like the metaphysical body versus the physical body, that there's aspects to that, because these bodies really at the end of the day are temporary. They're not lasting. They're not made well. These are like used vehicles that we bought. Like we're paying rent on a used vehicle right now. This body is not who we are. Our body is our fraction of source. That's what our real body is. And that takes development. So even if you go your whole life and you're in this state of like brain fog and you've got all this abuse in your past, whether it's, child abuse, which is always like the worst in my book, or it's medical abuse because of, either, parents who didn't think about it, or because they did it on purpose, or just because they didn't, know any better or know the difference or whatever, or didn't think it mattered. The physical body really only matters so much, I think. The metaphysical body, the body inside, your spiritual body, that's actually the real body. That's the real you. I mean, and anybody who's listening, I mean, you could go really in depth in this information if you were to look at my husband's work at pastorcliftonministry.com and go and watch his videos, because like he's like much more articulate than I am. And he's like one of those kind of people, I swear to God, like he's so good at research, and just like he would have been one of the like silent monks type, you know, in another life. But he's put out a lot of work, and like he could articulate this so much better than I could. So, you know, these bodies are temporary. They're recyclable material at the end of the day. Like they don't matter. Like these bodies are temporary. Our lives in the physical are fleeting. Not that they're not important and that we don't do important things during it, because the whole reason why we're here is because our fraction of source that we're a part of, we're all part of the same source, we're fractions of it. That's what it means. It says, like, you know, make man in the image of God. Like if you ever hear stuff like that, like that's, you know, biblical talk, that's what that means. It's not like, oh, I molded this dude out of fucking clay, you know, like, no, it means I am, you are, everybody is a fraction of that source that exists. And you can call it God or source or, you know, Yogi Bear, it doesn't fucking matter. Because God isn't going, you know, my name is God, you know. God doesn't do that. You know, like we gave it that name. You know, it's like on some other planet in another galaxy, God's going to have a different name that everybody calls it. It doesn't matter. Like, so these bodies, it's not that these bodies aren't important now. Like the whole point is that God, source, whatever, split itself up into fractions because it chose willfully to experience the physical aspect of reality. And that's why we manifest into a physical body, whether it developed naturally through nature or it was perhaps genetically engineered from some ancient human type race who found Neanderthals on some planet that's full of gold and mixed it with a bunch of DNA that's like theirs so they could get like a slave race that can actually take orders. So in either case, it doesn't matter, because that fraction of source obviously thought this mushed up, fucked up, you know, weird bastardized version of human life was interesting enough to drop a fraction of itself and have a fucking field day in. Because I mean, if you think just about like how weird nature is, like the thing is that there's always kind of a consistency in how like normal it is too. Like it's wild and it's unchainable, but at the same time, there's also like consistent pattern. And with like this type of human that we are, there ain't none of that going on. We're just chaotic all the time, like the way humans behave. So like there's no consistency really. Like I mean, that's just my take on it. I don't know. But anyway.
I mean, I share a lot of your cosmology. I'll just say it. I don't care if people are going to ridicule me. I've had spiritual experiences that are consistent with a lot of what you shared. During my EMDR, eye movement, desensitization, reprocessing experience when I was healing from some miscarriages that I had, I received downloads, visual downloads, sober, showing source, showing fractals, showing that we are fractals, fractions of source. So
Yeah.
I experienced that.
I mean, to me, in the end, I mean, and I was I was not like this in my youth. Like, I was told I was going to die very young. So I was maybe a little bit nihilistic, certainly atheistic, certainly materialistic, because what does it fucking matter? I'm going to be dead any day now. Like, that was the mindset in my 20s. So I didn't always think like this. So, but in the end, after so much strangeness that took place with me, it's the only thing that really made sense to me, that seems like a logical conclusion if you're looking at things clinically, and like how, like, an order, like, biologically would work. That's why it makes sense to me, because it's biology. Like, that's why nothing is flat in the universe, because the earth isn't flat, and the earth can't be flat. It would be impossible, because every single thing in the universe operates in circles, in round shapes. Everything's cyclical. Everything does this all the time. Nothing's flat in the universe. So it's like, that's why I look at it like that. It's biology. It's the microverse and the macroverse. It's part of one whole system. It's a physical, it's a non-physical, together operating as a system, just like the human body, just like any body. Any physical creature has a fraction of source in it. That's just, I mean, yeah. Sorry, Jerry.
Oh no, this is great. I'm just like nodding and like, yeah.
There's oh no, go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, I probably might just release this as part of my podcast. Is that okay? And you can post it on yours. I don't think I'm going to call it a book club meeting. I mean, it was intended as that at first, but like, this is such a great conversation. I love it.
You can do that. That's totally cool. I mean, you can, yeah, I can put it out like that too and send people to you. It's just, I think the perspective really needs to change and people need to start looking at an entirety instead of fractions of it. And I don't care if people want to think, oh, well, it's got to be this or it's got to be that or this or that. I think everybody just needs to get on the same page in the bigger picture format and stop splitting hairs about irrelevant bullshit, because that causes too many problems, and it's never going to work that way. It's just not going to work that way. Like, there's just too much of it, and if you can't even like come to one conclusion that's everybody's in agreement with, which there are people who are in the truth seeker community and they're not even on the same page about morality and ethics. There are people in the truth seeker community who actually, I've heard say, they think that morality is a subjective concept because of how we, disciplining our kids. What do I do with disciplining my kids? Because I can't figure out the difference between discipline and abuse. That kind of shit. Like, and I've heard it more than once, which is
on the One Great Word Network.
Maybe not there, but like other people in the True Seer community generally, not in the network. But I've heard people say that, and I'm like, okay, I can get past you thinking the earth is flat. I can get past you thinking this type of diet is the only type of diet you can have, or else you're a piece of shit. I can get past you, whoever it is, thinking that stuff, but then to say morality and ethics are subjective, that's where I'm like, you can't even be on the same page there. Or not you, they, people.
It's a tenet of Satanism.
And they're like, well, it can't be because of this kind of situation. Like, I'm like, and people have used that excuse because, that's my neighbor. They can't think of the difference between discipline and abusing their kids.
I mean, you have to set boundaries with them.
That's how they learn.
Yeah.
And I was an asshole as a kid. I was a latchkey kid. I was a dick. Okay. I was a pain in the ass. Absolutely pain in the ass. I mean, and they gave me some leeway because I'm a child of a child's disease, shit like that. So they're like, oh, well, she's going to be dead soon. So don't deal with her much.
God.
Not in like a sad way, just more like, oh, God, what an asshole. So that can develop a personality where you're just like an asshole. Like, it can do that to you. So I got punished for asshole shit that I did, and I deserved it. And it taught me how not to be an asshole.
Yeah.
So people need to understand there's a difference between discipline and abuse. And I know the difference. I've experienced both. But you, as the adult, need to learn how the difference is, right? We're the ones who have to grow up and be like, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to actually grow up and learn how to use discipline and boundaries with my children so that they can grow into healthy human beings as adults.
Yeah.
So I've actually heard people say that even in the Truth Seeker community, that morality is subjective. And I just don't understand it. Like, you think we're going to get a nice world. You think we're going to get an anarchopic society.
Wow.
When you have people who are telling the truth and they're doing the great work, but morality is subjective. You gotta be kidding me. It's not going to work that way. Yeah. And I'm not saying, like, I don't even think we could get that society by just teaching morality. You've got to actually lead by example. You have to show people how it works. You can't just say, this is morality. This is how it works. Here's a textbook. Read it. Do this and you'll be moral. Like, you got to show people how it works. Like, theory only goes so far. Teaching people, morality, it's theory. Like, the book that we were talking about, where is it? I don't have it out here, but like the Trivium book by the nun.
Sister Miriam Joseph. Yeah.
Now, that's all true information, but the point is you have to practice the information that's in that book as a normal practice within your life forever. Otherwise, all it is theory. It's not anything until you actually do something with it. Right. If you don't actually do something with it for you as the individual, it's only theory. And I see so many people doing that stuff. They don't practice it as a regular in their life. They don't treat people as they would like to be treated. They don't treat others as they would like to be treated. And they think they're going to get respect and get treated well when they treat other people with disrespect and treat them poorly. They think they're going to, you get back what you put out into the world. If you put shit out into the world, that's the only thing you're ever going to get back. Because it's part of the law. It's a mechanical system. It's part of the Hermetic principles. part of the theory that you got to practice. And if you practice getting shit out, you're going to get shit, because that's how the mechanical world, the spiritual mechanical system of the law works.
Right.
Like, and that, I don't really teach it as like a spiritual thing. I kind of try to teach it as more of like a mechanical, biological system.
Right.
Because then you're looking at a machine, and you're not looking at like something that could be seen as religious.
Right. Right. And I think I was talking to, I believe it was Alpha Vuk and Tom Dina, about how part of our jobs, in a way, as natural law content creators, is to invite experimentation. Like, just experiment, like, see, because I think I've experienced that natural law is true, that if the golden rule, if you will, is true. And when I've aligned myself and tried to really just live morally, like the majority of the time, as best as I can, 100% of the time really is what I aim for. I've gotten really amazing shit happen in the immediate individual level. And I think people should just be invited to experiment to see if it's real or not. It's not about belief,
Yeah. It's about experience. It's about experimenting. I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, exactly that. I mean, it's not about belief. And people want to just say, oh, well, it's, I don't see it that way or whatever. And like, it really, like, that's why I don't try to talk about this stuff, like, even though it is spiritual, it is very much a spiritual aspect of our reality. It's the non-physical. I try to explain it more in a mechanical, biological, living organism. It's a system. It's like a machine. You get what you ask for, as above, so below. It's polarity, it's correspondence, it's rhythm, it's mind. I mean, it's the law. It's like everything we put out into the world will come back to us. And if you put out shit, you're gonna get shit. And if you put out good, you might still get shit. But, sometimes the shit that you get when you put out good actually leads to really amazing things. And I've experienced that. And it's beautiful and it's amazing. And you're just like, what the fuck just happened? Because you just thought it was all going to shit, even though you were putting things out that were good. And then you're like, that is not what I expected to happen at all. Like, at all. Like, I mean, the book that I wrote, like I told you this, the book I wrote, I'm basically trashing what modern day government and the medical institution is. And now I have people in both the medical system and in the government, not on a large scale. It's like a handful of people, like seriously, like a handful of people. But that's already something kind of crazy to me. That feels crazy to me, even if it's only like a handful of people and they're buying my book and reading it.
Yeah, man.
I mean, I think that's crazy. I mean, I know it's not like making waves. It's not changing a huge landscape on something, but even to have that feels wild to me. That's something that's occurring now.
It's beautiful.
And you just never know, like, what's going to happen later on with what you do if you put out something good, and just experiment with that. Put something good out and see what happens. Same thing when you put a seed in the ground and it grows a sunflower. Eventually, not tomorrow, but maybe eventually it might grow a sunflower. So it's the same thing with everything else in your reality. It all works that way, all of it. There's no aspects of reality where the mechanics of the law do not work. It operates within all of it, regardless of your beliefs or whether you think morality is objective or subjective, whether you are atheist or a spiritualist or a spiritual, I should say. It doesn't matter. Like, it's just going to be that way. And if you put shit out, you're going to get shit back. And if you put good out, then you're going to get good back. Everything you put out in the world, you get back. Everything. There's never going to be no correspondence. There's never going to be like a no consequence. Like, you're always going to have a consequence to every single thing that you do. Everything, whether it's good or bad. And people don't look at it like that. Or they think consequences are negative. I'm like, no, consequence is a definition. It's a word that has negative connotations because of the way society has structured their language. But really, a consequence is just a reaction to an action. It's something that happened because you did something. Not because you thought and felt something, because you did something. And that's another distinction I want to make. Thinking and feeling, these things, they're not physical actions. You can change them. We don't have to buy the snake oil that people sell us when they're lying to us. It's shitty. It's unethical. People shouldn't lie, because when you lie, then you are an asshole. That's not something that you should do as a person, and define yourself as a liar, because you can get a really bad reputation. You end up being ostracized. People won't want to deal with you. And they'd have every right to throw you out of whatever community you're in as a liar, because now you're not trustworthy because you lie about everything. But it's still just words, and it's still just influence. And we don't have to buy snake oil coming out of people's mouth. We don't have to buy lies. We can look at somebody and go, oh, well, they said this and I bought it. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't know that person. So why would you just trust whatever they say? You don't know who that person is.
Right.
Not really. So why would you just believe it? Because they said it and they sounded nice and they're charismatic and whatever it is, you know? And I don't mean just politicians. I mean anybody who does that. Like, all it takes to be a good snake oil salesman is charisma. Charisma and a good understanding of psychology. That's it.
Yeah.
And people have been doing, like, all the grifters out there, like, I got an insider. That is a snake oil salesman. I got an insider. Like, okay. Like, you shouldn't just buy that shit. Like, we don't have to buy influence. Like, just because somebody says something doesn't mean anything. Words are just words. Words can change. Words are not physical entities. They're just shit that comes out of people's mouths for whatever agenda. And then emotions can change. Feelings can change. Heart-based intelligence can change. And words and emotions do not affect other people unless other people allow it to affect them, because that is entirely a non-physical effect. And, you know, like, just like what we were talking about, people who go after us and they're trolls and they just want to antagonize and cause disarray, and they just want to cause shit, right? We don't have to feed them what they're looking for.
Right.
That's snake oil salesman behavior. Like, they're selling us grief and antagonization, and we're buying it. And we don't have to do that. We could say, oh, yeah, okay. And then move on with our day and not give a shit what they think or say, because who cares what they think or say? So we don't have to buy influence. We, like, every time somebody lies to us, we don't have to buy that. Like, I mean, that's why I put lying in the realm of ethics, because is that something that would be cool to do or not? Because lying can cause a lot of problems. And I'd say the exceptions to this rule would be like small children and people who are severely handicapped mentally and they can't, like, they're in your full care.
I do think though that, like, for example, with the COVIDs, there were people who stole the populace's ability, hampered the populace's ability to make informed decisions.
Well, I mean, yeah, they kind of did, because remember now, as far as I can see, so many of these people are already severely damaged because of being in the womb and having all kinds of pharmaceuticals and poison food and poison water in the developing process when they're in the womb. So in a sense, yeah, but at the same time, not really, because all the information that they just said on the news or the websites or whatever it was, right? All of that stuff that they said still didn't really matter, because every single one of us had the ability to go online and research and research and research and look at these medical textbooks and look at these medical textbooks from like 10 years ago. Look at all of these doctors who are saying this, like, listen to all these morticians who are all saying the same exact thing and nobody's listening to them, because the morticians, they didn't get the memo. They were like, I don't know what the hell that was, because they did not get the memo of like toe the line or else, like all these doctors did. Like, and they were talking, they were like, that doesn't make any sense at all. Like, what are you talking about? And they're medical doctors. They just deal with dead people. Like, and like, we as adults, even if we are damaged to a certain extent because of our environment, we can still, like I said, the metaphysical part of our body can still develop, and we can still have enough wherewithal as an adult to know when we're being fed bullshit. Like, I don't personally understand, like, how people as adults, as even 40 or 50-year-old adults, can't hear something that is a contradiction to something that they have been hearing for like 40 years of their life, and they suddenly hear the exact opposite and they go, oh yeah, totally, that makes sense. Even though the last 40 years of my life that I've experienced, because I've been alive, because I have been part of the world and have been told exactly the fucking opposite of. Like, everybody just shut off immediately, and it was entirely because it was a fear-based response. And because you have people who, because, you know, all the TikTok shit, remember, going back to the TikTok shit, that stops people from like really thinking long term. I think it dumps people down personally, but yeah. Like, people just can't think what happened 10 minutes ago. They can't remember what happened 10 minutes ago. Lights on, lights off. So, but that doesn't really matter, because as adults, we are still personally responsible for ourselves. And if you think something sounds like bullshit, or even if you think that that's true.
Do you have to go soon?
No, something was clicking. I don't know what it was, but
I know you have a guest in your house or something. a
No,
spirit.
no. Yeah, no, it's okay. Um, Even with all of that stuff, we are the ones who have to take personal responsibility. Whether you think the COVID stuff was true or not, doesn't matter. Does not matter. Whether you buy it or not, you are still personally responsible for everything that happens to you. Because the thing is during that whole COVID years, they said, oh, you have to do this or you have to do that or else this or that. Nothing happened. The people who said no, nothing happened to them. Yeah,
Right.
some people lost their jobs, but if your boss is going to fire you because your rights are potentially being violated and medically and you don't want that to happen, then your boss is a piece of shit. Your boss is a scumbag then. And like, if your boss forces you, then that's not the job for you. Adapt, bend, be like a reed in the wind, find a new job. Dude, there are people who quit their careers careers of skill sets that they built over decades, and they quit that and they go work at Costco because they can't make any money anymore. And, you can get a new job. Like anybody who has any kind of job of like any kind of career, doesn't matter how good you are at it. If your boss is going to fire you over something like that or whatever it is, you can go get a Costco job for like $30 an hour. You ain't going to starve.
Dang.
Yeah. Like it's crazy with benefits. You ain't going to starve. It ain't going to be the end of the world. And guess what? The whole trend of the 6 feet apart, wearing mask bullshit, that shit's going to fade just like everything else does because it's just a trend. And you can go back to your regular job at doing whatever it was, your real job, your career. So, like, the thing is like, even though we were lied to, obviously, grossly fucking lied to, and we had doctors violating people's rights because doctors should be classed in a different place because they are actually in a position, they don't have a job. They have a obligation because they chose a career that deals with the livelihood. They chose to be stewards over health for human beings. That's a totally different thing.
Right.
That is a different tier to that. If it's your job at like the liquor store or whatever, fuck that job and go work at Costco for $30 an hour and get benefits in a year. Shit, I even think they give you dental. Like, you ain't gonna starve. People like, I had to get the vaccine because of my job. And I'm like, you can go work anywhere. There's plenty of places that were not enforcing it. The whole time I talked to people, there were plenty of businesses, they weren't enforcing it, they weren't pushing it.
Right. I do see your point now. I think you argue.
Sorry, go on.
No, I was just saying, I think your argument makes sense. Like, there are certain situations where the moral transgression of deception could be considered ethical and more so than moral. Because I agree, there is a certain level of responsibility, and when you choose ignorance, that's evil. That's willful, right? So,
and that's you doing it,
right?
That's not them doing it. I didn't see any military people in the street with, military trucks knocking at everybody's door, force vaccinating. They weren't doing that shit like they were doing that. They were pulling people out of homes in Australia over that shit. They had military people with guns coming to people's doors and force vaccinating people and like arresting them over shit and taking their children who people who didn't want to vaccinate their kids. That's the kind of shit that goes on in Australia.
Dude, I had no idea that was going on in Australia, man.
And people think they didn't have a choice here. We've got options. We can always say no. Always. They can't do that in Australia because military people will show up at their door. They won't
got rid
do
of the
that.
guns. first with the Christchurch event, and then
yeah, they wouldn't dare do that in this country. They wouldn't dare do it. So people think they didn't have choices. They had choices. They just didn't take personal responsibility and make the choices. They chose the easy routes out. And I understand why they did it. It was hard. It was scary. There was a lot of confusion. I understand. I have full empathy for it. And I want to help anybody who's in that position. I do, truly. I really, really do. Because I understand the mindset. I understand what it feels like to be all over the place and foggy up in your brain and confused and like, what the fuck? What do I do? And it's stressful. But the parasite class, they know that when they put us under stress, we make very poor decisions. We don't think things through. We don't behave normally. And then on top of having all kinds of whatever chemical shit in our body because everything's poisoned, that's not helping. That doesn't help at all. And on top of being constantly berated by media and propaganda, that doesn't help. It's very confusing. It can be stressful. It causes reaction. It causes people to do things that they normally wouldn't do under another circumstance.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I didn't see one single military cop. I didn't see one single doctor. I'm sure it happened. There's always exceptions to things, but you have to really be a real, you got to really cause a lot of trouble for them to actually even give a fuck about you at all. If you're dealing a bunch of drugs or something, and then you start talking about this kind of stuff, and that's the real excuse. They can bag you on the drugs. They'll come and get you for that, but they don't give a fuck if you're saying COVID was an inside job. They're not going to care about that shit. So I'm just saying, we always have choices. We always have avenues out. You just have to eat it sometimes and make the hard choices. And it sucks. It really sucks. I know that, but really that's why I'm saying it's just influence. We don't have to buy influence. I didn't see one cop knocking on my door saying, you better vaccinate, Sara, or you won't get any health care. That didn't happen. I didn't even have doctors do that to me. They did shit that was wrong, putting people on ventilators and filling up with remdesivir, whatever that drug is called.
Remdesivir,
that was murder. That was outright murder. What they did, the people who did that should not just go to prison for it. They should hang for it because it was murder. It was on purpose, and they did it intentionally. That was murder.
Yeah.
But the majority of us, they didn't force us to do shit. They said, all they did was influence us, say, oh, if you don't get it, then we can't give you this. That's what doctors did. That's influence, which you could still say no to. You could still say no to that. That's personal responsibility. I didn't see any cops doing that shit. I actually heard cops who were saying, I'm not going to enforce mandates in this town. There were cops who said that. Not all of them, obviously, but I didn't see cops in hospitals patrolling the halls, forcing people to get vaccinated. None of that shit happened here. Well, some of it happened here, I'm sure. There's exceptions for everything, of course. But on a large scale, all that shit happened under the table kind of shit. I didn't see that here. So that's why I say this was all influence, and we all had choices, and that means taking personal responsibility. And sometimes those choices, taking personal responsibility, is the hard way out.
Right.
I made the choice not to go back to any hospital institution for 2 years because of it. Because I was like, fuck that. I don't care what happens. And at the end of those 2 years, that was when the CDC actually finally officially stated that the PCR test was not an official way to test for COVID. And it can't be, that doesn't mean hospitals weren't still using it and people weren't still trying to use it as a weapon. But it meant that like the veil was starting to lift. It meant that the pressure was starting to lift. So that was when I took the chance and watched everything, because you got to watch it all. Watch it all. Don't just trust things. And I went into the hospital because at the end of that 2 years, that's when I was in respiratory failure, like full respiratory failure. So I kind of had to make a choice there where I'm like, what am I going to do here? I can either just let myself die, or I can see what the atmosphere is like now. I can go into the hospital and see what happens. Because, I mean, there's no doctor who's ever been able to bully me into doing anything I didn't want to do. That's never happened to me. So, but that's just me. I'm already used to thinking like this and behaving like this, and most people aren't, which is why I know and I feel for people who can't bring all of this together and still say no to something that they're not okay with.
Oh, dude, I love everything you said, man. Well, a couple things came up for me in hearing you. It makes me think a lot about the sort of fear versus love binary, right? And like, if you choose fear, yeah, then you're gonna, I mean, that's just going to lead to immorality in some fashion, right? You're deceiving yourself. You're causing suffering in yourself by letting that fear rule you. Whereas, you know, it takes courage. It takes love. It's not, there's no comfort. But living with integrity, like all of that, you know, it's hard, but it's easier in the long run to make that choice versus the fear-based one.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to know, as a sidebar, just as just curious, you don't have to answer, but like, where do you get your strength from? Like, what happened that you're very strong?
God, it's hard to like think of things like that. But really, and it's going to be morbid, but it was when I realized that these bodies are temporary and that death is part of the normal cycle of life and it's essential. It's just as essential as being alive. And it's part of the stream of consciousness cycle. It's part of reincarnation. It's like when I realized for myself, because for everyone else, it's consideration until they like it's the only thing that makes sense to me. When I realized reincarnation was real, when I realized these bodies are temporary, when I realized that we're here to experience as we're the experiencer part of, we're here to experience for our fraction of source. That there's a purpose to that. And it's for a reason. Like that's when I realized like I don't have, it's not like fearful. I'm not afraid of that. Like that doesn't bother me. Like it doesn't bother me if I'm not afraid of dying. I'm not afraid of pain. I'm not afraid of hardship. I'm not afraid of suffering. And it's just, there's no point in being afraid of that stuff and being afraid of saying no and being afraid of defending your own rights when you understand that's the case. So that's how I view that, I guess, if that answers that question. I mean, like, I don't look at it in terms like, oh, I'm so strong and brave and blah, because, the woke agenda movement kind of usurped that whole idea, like, oh, you're so brave and beautiful. It's just, they kind of ruined even that, like, that whole idea for people who actually deal with, like, fucked up shit. But so it's hard to look at it like that in that kind of perspective for me. But I realize, like, when, like, all of what I just said, I mean, like, that's what it feels more like to me. There's no point in being afraid of shit when that's the case. Like, what good does that do me? How does that benefit me? How does that benefit my child, who I'm supposed to be the one that she looks up to as her steward, or as I was the copy of her that came before her, like she's a copy of me. So how does that benefit her for me to be that way?
Wow.
There's no benefit there. So why be that? Why be afraid? Be fearless. Always be fearless. Because it's not going to do you any harm. Be fearless. Like, that's like the best advice I could give anybody. So, yeah.
I love the word fearless, because I tell my kids, it's just, you can have the fear, but it's just less. Like, you just don't let it rule you.
Yeah. I mean, and there's a difference between, okay, so we were just kind of talking about that. You know that cartoon, Courage the Cowardly Dog? It's like a 90s cartoon. Okay. It's so cute. It was like one of my favorite cartoons. I love Courage the Cowardly Dog. So cute. And it's kid friendly, so your kid can watch it. I mean, I like the weird, creepy, kind of dark stuff, so, but it's made to be kid friendly. There's no sex or cussing or stuff like that. So, not like this episode, like, motherfuckers. But Courage the Cowardly Dog was a cartoon in like the 90s. And the premise is, it's like this old elderly couple, right? And they're kind of infirm, and they're kind of crazy and batty and wacky, and, the husband is, a cranky a-hole, and the wife is this really chipper and like really super happy, like baker housewife. And they come across this dog, finds their house, and they just kind of adopt this dog, and they called him Courage. So now Courage is cowardly, and he's afraid of everything, and he's just like, everything's scary, and there's all these like terrible things out in the world, and there's all these grifters trying to take advantage of these two elderly people who have adopted me, and there's these evil people who are trying to, kidnap them, and there's this crazy thing going on, and all these villains come out of the woodwork. And so he's afraid of all of this stuff, but he does whatever it takes to protect them and the environment, the elderly couple and the environment, and to make sure that these villains don't have their way with them. He does it anyway, which is why he's Courage the Cowardly Dog, because the world is fucking scary out there, and it's hard, and there's all kinds of a-holes out there. But so you can be afraid of stuff, but that has nothing to do with what you're going to do, because thought and emotion it's an inner thing. It's a spiritual thing. It can be molded. It can change. It's what you do that matters. That's why, what you do is in the realm of morality. Action is in the realm of morality. It's what we do. Because I can say and feel all kinds of things. And then 10 years later, I can say and do all and feel all kinds of different things. All can change. None of those things affect anybody around me.
Right.
I mean, unless those people allow it to. That's their personal responsibility to not allow me, my shit, affect them. That's personal responsibility. Just like I have crazy people all around me saying all kinds of crazy stuff, but they don't affect me because I don't let them affect me. Like I don't let their crazy shit affect me. I mean, they can call me a stupid, crazy bitch, but it doesn't matter to me unless they are like, you're a stupid, crazy bitch. And then they come into my house and they smash my sewing machine up with a hammer. That's when you're tipping into action. And now somebody's violated my rights by destroying my property. But it doesn't matter to me if somebody calls me a crazy, stupid bitch. I'm like, okay, did you take your meds today? Are we low on our dosage?
Right.
Did we skip a dose? You know,
yeah.
Not that they should be on those doses to begin with, but
right.
like when they go off of them, then it gets worse after so many decades of being on them. So I don't know if any of that makes sense.
Dude. Yeah, I want to watch that show now. I'm like not good at like pop culture references anymore. I kind of like stopped watching TV a long time ago, and I'm like, and now that I'm like part of this like truth and freedom podcasting community, like I'm even less in tune on things. So I'm like, I don't know. I'm like not good at like movies and stuff, shows.
No, it's okay. That's the stuff
I need to have that vocabulary, that understanding of what people are doing, you know, like I'm kind of out of touch, you know. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, but I mean, that's normal too. I mean, you're raising kids. Like, I mean, we all do that. Like when I was raising Emma, I was out of touch because my focus was on my kid. You know, my focus wasn't on whatever movie that was coming out. You know, I'm like, oh. But like that's just like something that we do. Like we like movies and stuff like that. But like as a kid, I watched Courage the Cowardly Dog. I watched Ren and Stimpy. I watched Pinky and the Brain. I mean, like the weird cartoons that weird kids watch.
I like Pinky and the Brain also.
I love Pinky and the Brain. What are we going to do tonight, Pinky? Same thing we do every night. Or whatever they say.
Take over the world.
I'm going to take over the world. Like
the megalomaniac mouse. Yes.
Yeah. I watched, what was that one show? Real Monsters. Totally weird cartoon.
I don't think I've seen that one.
It's weird. Like you think it's normal when you're a kid, and then you turn into an adult, you're an adult, and then you rewatch and you're like, this is a fucking weird cartoon. This is made for kids. And it's not like sexual or like inappropriate for kids. It's just like totally weird. And there's books like that too. I was really interested in like, one book as a kid was called, The Thief of Always. Oh, great book. Such a good book for like every 14-year-old kid should read The Thief of Always. Great book. I think it's
Clive Barker.
Is it Clive Barker? Yeah.
Magical House. Yeah, cool. I'll check it out.
But I wouldn't say Clive Barker isn't not all of Clive Barker's work is for kids. He had somebody after him. Hold on. But The Thief of Always is a great book for kids. Thief of Always.
Um, this wasn't our original intention, but this is great. I love that we're coming up with like YA books that, does it teach morality or?
It teaches lessons. It teaches hard lessons. It teaches gratitude lessons.
That's cool.
See, that's the thing. That's why I like books like this. That's why I like, Grimm fairy tales. I mean, it's not directly going into morality and ethics. It's teaching hard lessons. This is what happens when you take things for granted. This is what happens when you follow strangers into an unknown location.
Right.
Stuff like that. This is what happens when you take advantage of your friends. This is what happens when you steal. Like that's what stories like this do. And The Thief of Always is definitely a gratitude story, a lack of gratitude story that develops into why you should be grateful for the things you do have, that you are able to have. But it's a great book. It's always been one of my favorite books. Clive Barker makes a lot of good. There was another one. What is it?
Did you read Wrinkle in Time as a child?
Yeah, long time ago. That's a good book too.
Yeah, that book was like, I think I was listening to a Dark Journalist episode on it after the fact, and there's a lot of like occult ideas in the book actually.
Yeah. Garth Nix. Garth Nix is an also really, really good YA young adult author, fiction writer. Also one of my favorites. Garth Nix, a lot of his influence came from Clive Barker. It must have. And I would say Clive Barker not all of his work is for kids. Okay. Some of it is. It's not all for kids, though. Clive Barker, I think he's the one he also did the Books of Blood. That's adult reading material. Absolutely right. Adult reading material. I would not give that to children. But The Thief of Always, I think, is a must-read for children. Great book.
Cool.
And I think they do. That's why, the project, we won't say if we're going to put it out, but the project I'm working on now, a soft announcement, I guess, it's going to be something like that. That's what I would like it to be. Only it'll be very history based, and we're going to be pulling from history.
I love
things that really happened.
And we spoke offline about how, if one is homeschooling, unschooling, alternative schooling in some capacity, how do you teach history when most of the curriculum materials are compromised? Mm-hmm. So there's definitely a need for us to teach not just only teach, but just like go through the research process of like learning history, that too, that there can be multiple narratives and perspectives and how to sort of gain a perspective from those perspectives, as a process, trivium process.
Yeah. Well, like I think it's important to find all the information and then, glean from that, like what actually logically makes sense and put puzzle pieces together. Right. So because the truth can be known, like it's, I don't know. So there's a lot to that kind of, to history, I think. And I think if people knew more about real history, then things wouldn't be so scary and confusing and difficult to navigate. because you can see patterns a lot clearer when you understand real history. And so, I mean, yeah, I mean, that's all I could really say. I mean, I just enjoy history. I think it's really interesting. A lot of it doesn't really matter in the face of stuff like morality, but it's still the truth. Like, there's either the truth or it's not the truth. And history, whether it's been usurped and it's been manipulated and we've been told a false history, all that stuff doesn't really matter because it's influence, and it's our personal responsibility to figure out what is real and not real. That's up to us, not to just buy the snake oil salesman pitches us. So, you know, like once, like that's also the thing, like with morality, like in being action, when you do something, that's now in history. That's been done. You can't take it back. You can't change it. You can change your behavior so you don't do stuff like that anymore, but you still did it in the past. And now it's history forever. It's there forever. It's the truth. You can't change it. That's it. It doesn't go away just because you change your behavior. All that happens is in history, the behavior changed, so that action stopped happening from you. So that's like also the thing, like our own personal histories, either some happened or it didn't happen. Like if we change our behavior halfway through our life, you know, it doesn't mean that the stuff that we did in our past goes away or it didn't happen now because we changed our behavior. It doesn't erase your past. It's still in history. It's still the truth. It's there forever. You know, like we were saying, like thoughts and emotions, all that can change. And all that is influence. It's all influence. And like I said, my husband, he can do that. He can explain this way more articulately than I can. I'm just kind of being rough around the edges here. But your thoughts and emotions, that's all influence. That can change. It doesn't matter at all because it depends on whether somebody else buys it or not. Excuse me. But once we do something, it's done forever. That's it. It's a done deal. That's it. It's done. That's it. It's an action. It's truth. It's history. But I mean, we can have all kinds of fucked up thoughts and emotions, and if we don't act upon it, then
right. Well, also a lot of what you said also makes me think about like one's shadow work process and dealing with like, you know, healing traumas from the past. Like though you can't change events and actions from the past, you can think differently about those things and the frameworks with which you arrive with those things. So like, and again, I'll just bring up my EMDR experience. Like that's why EMDR is like over 80% effective for healing, not like curing, not treating, curing PTSD. And I stand by that. And it's not just me, it's like been scientifically, like there's been multiple studies talking about its efficacy. And I don't think it's a well-known healing modality because it would basically wipe out the whole therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy space. Like if more people, like I was demitted from my therapy. She's like, you've graduated. Like it really does heal your, like all trauma, even if it's not, even if the complaining trauma, the incoming initial acute trauma, it heals everything. It really does. Cause you go back in time and you re-engage it in a different way. It's hard to explain unless you do it. It's very experiential, but
it sounds,
but yeah,
I mean, you know, and if it works, you know, So, I mean, and if that works, I think that's awesome. You know, I think, and then I think there's different ways to heal from our past traumas, the traumas other people do to us, the traumas we do to ourselves, you know, but that's all personal responsibility. We can't control what happens out into the world. We can only control ourselves. So, like, we have to take personal responsibility, even during the COVID years. That was our responsibility to filter and to be responsible enough to go, okay, they're telling me this, so let's see if there's actually anything to what they're saying. Like, where's the backup? Where's the multiple resources, the sources that claim it? And, you know, sometimes you need many, many, many sources. And I mean, it didn't take much convincing me that it was all bullshit in the beginning, because I was like, yeah, the medical industry is full of shit. The majority of it is full of shit. So I didn't need to be too convinced out of it. You know, like I was just already disenchanted. But like, I mean, that just takes personal responsibility to just back up everything with experience, with research, personal research. Don't let somebody else tell you. Don't let somebody else blackmail you. Don't let somebody else feed you a line. We're adults. What adults do not know how to read other adults when they're saying something to you? Like, that's not a normal skill for people? Like, it seems like that's normal if you're like in your 30s or 40s or 50s and you've been around for a minute, and you know when people are feeding you a line or just full of shit, you know, like, it seems like that should be normal because you've just been around. But apparently it's not.
I mean, I think also, like, as you discern the lies, it's a skill. You kind of get better and better at it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that I mean, 100 years ago, every single man and woman could do that. Every single one of them could do that shit. Normally, it was a normal thing. It wasn't even like, it was something like, you know, breathing or eating. It was just like something you knew to do, because you've been alive for decades now and you understand how people work and how the world works. So at some point you kind of start to figure out like who's full of shit and who's not. You start to like read people's behavior and like read people's body language when they're being awkward, or they're all like, you know.
John says hi.
Hi, John. I messaged you.
Yeah, no, I didn't get a chance to look at it yet. I gotta interrupt you for 1 second. Listen, I got this great idea for the events in the future with Art Gardens. It's going to be a glow-in-the-dark temporary tattoo of a turtle.
What?
For kids.
Oh,
and for the events. Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
No, it is a cool idea.
You guys were messaging about artwork or something, or?
No, it was about the show. Because tomorrow I'm interviewing Cat Waters.
That's right. Yay.
I want to watch
and,
it. I like the front of mine.
Yeah, and John should come on Crosstalk and talk about his project.
John, did you hear that?
Wait till we actually do something. Wait till we actually do something.
Okay.
We haven't done anything yet.
Okay. Just let me know.
I don't think there's anything wrong with promoting.
Not at all.
All right.
We could definitely
So
I don't want to waste her time. She's got a good show, and I don't want to be like in the way.
No,
You're not in the way.
you're not in the way. We're recording right now.
I'm always in the way.
No. You're not.
So, I mean, just like after like 40, 50 years of being alive, you start to get a handle on people's body language and their behavior, and when they're like, oh, okay, this one, I mean, it's a normal thing. And 100 years ago, every single adult human being could do that. And now they can't because they're scrolling on TikTok. Swipe, swipe, swipe. Emojiing it up. Now they can't tell when people are feeding them bullshit.
I'm very aware that I'm a millennial like you right now. Just saying. Like, swipe. Emoji.
Yeah, I'm just like, duh. Like, duh, guys. Come on. Like, get a grip. So, I don't know. But then again, I think about the medical damage people have gone through. And that just brings that awareness, like,
right,
all the way. There is none after that, in a lot of cases, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So,
well, given that your interview with Cat Waters is happening tomorrow, I'll try to release this tonight and message you. And then I guess for the recording purposes, where can people find you? Obviously, you're on Revolution Radio on Wednesdays from 1 to 3 Eastern.
Studio 8.
Hey, yep.
Yeah, you can. It'll play live there. Find the Telegram chat room and go in there, because there's the Element chat room there, which you can also use. But the Telegram Crosstalk chat room is a little bit more personal, and I can actually see questions and comments that people send me. And then after, if people don't see the live show, if they're at least on the Telegram, they'll get all the updates on when I post the live show onto the other platforms that I use, which is Rumble, Odyssey, and Substack. And I mean, they can find all kinds of stuff there. So it'll be all my past work is in there. Cool. And they invite links to everything on the link tree. So I'm not like hidden or anything. You can easily find me.
Yay. Well, I'm glad I took the class with you. I would have never met you. I would have eventually met you, I think. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. What's the cat's name?
This is Hissler. It's a mixture of Hitler and Hissler.
Why?
John named Hissler that because when Hissler was a kitten, that was Hissler's personality. Now she's like complete dog, lap dog personality. She never hisses anymore. Yeah.
See? Behavior can change, or mindsets can change. We were just talking about this last night with animals even, and they're
wrong story.
Listen,
oh my gosh,
that's the wrong story. Listen,
okay.
The story with the cat, the kids in the neighborhood, actually, the people that had the kittens, they named her Hissler because she hisses at everybody, right? So I kind of like held on to it, and I kind of like put a T in there a little bit. I don't know if you ever heard of the quatrains from Nostradamus, but he actually mentions Hissler.
Oh, wow.
Right. So it's
really?
got like a spiritual connotation to it, but also like prophecy, and she used to be so mean. Yo, she's attacked everybody. She used to scratch them, and oh my God, it was horrible.
She never attacked me.
Now she's all purrs.
You're a sweet little baby. A sweet little cat baby. I think I actually have a book with all of Nostradamus's supposed.
The name of the other cat, they were calling it No Name. It didn't have a name. They were calling it No Name. I said, you can't call a cat No Name.
Oh my God, that's the best name.
No, listen, I adapted to No Bull. Like, it's like, now it's not no anymore. It's Noble.
Noble.
Like, it's like able, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I like it.
But he plays his role, man. He climbs up real high up in the trees, like real far, and this one likes to touch the keyboard a lot.
Every time I podcast.
Every time she
Literally.
does something. But yeah, the cats are cool.
That reminds me too.
Noble's like a recon cat. So like he'll go around and like he'll check the whole scene. He does a whole perimeter check. This one here does it a little bit, but they're both vicious attack animals. Believe me.
Oh wow.
Yeah. This is true.
She's cute. I think she's cute.
Do you only have fish? Do you have pets? Other pets besides fish?
No.
That's Sherbert. Sherbert's huge.
She's huge. She really is huge. I don't think I can bring this any further. There she is.
So cute.
Yeah, she's huge. She's a huge fish. She's a little monster. That reminds me though, also, Neverwhere is a great book. Great book for kids or young adults. Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman.
Oh, yeah.
All of Neil Gaiman's work. Awesome writer. I love Neil Gaiman. Also one of my favorites as a kid. Neverwhere, though, champion book. That is a great book.
Cool.
Not everybody likes these kind of authors, but I think they're great, and I think they're good for young adults. Because it's adventurous. And it also shows some of like the dark sides of what could be in the world, and it's kind of magical, and it's kind of like, I mean, it just has that kind of feeling to it where you're like, I don't know. There's something about it that I think is just healthy.
Tolkien's work definitely shaped my worldview early on because, like, I read it really young because I think I saw like a cartoon version of The Hobbit and I was like, oh, I want to read that book, and then not realizing that like it was like for several grades ahead in terms of vocabulary, but so I just got introduced to these like occult concepts really young, you know, in that book. Wasn't he like a Rosicrucian or something?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Anyway.
And there's movie versions of all of these, but I prefer the books personally. It's just worth it. But I think Neil Gaiman it feels like Neil Gaiman was influenced by Clive Barker. Or maybe it's the other, I don't remember now when I was reading about him, but.
Have you heard or read of Phil Pullman, his Dark Material series? It's like a YA novel series.
Oh,
it's like a trilogy.
I thought maybe when I knew he was Philip. Why do I think that's Philip Pullman? Yeah,
I think it's Philip Pullman. Sorry.
You're right. Hold on. Oh no, Bill Pullman is an American actor, and then there's Philip Pullman, the Dark Materials. Dark Materials. There's actually books. I read all of those as a kid. Great books.
Those books are interesting to me because it's definitely like, you know, there's some satanic vibes with the child trafficking and the, you know,
telling it how it is.
Fighting and yeah.
There's a lot of young adult authors who write stories, who write books, and they put all of that stuff in there, like they're warning people about things. That's like all the Grimm fairy tales, those are warnings. They're lessons to learn. They're things to look out for. Like, this is how dark the world is. So you as a young adult, You as a child, you know, you're feeding them the understanding that the world is dark like that, or can be. And
Right.
I think a lot of young adult authors back in the day would write stories that were like subconsciously embedding in you certain information that you wouldn't really understand until you were an adult and you could like assess the information normally.
Right.
I mean, I read all kinds of this kind of stuff as I was a kid. But yeah, Philip Pullman, like the Golden Compass series, like all that stuff, like that's rot with it. Like, and it was only as an adult I realized, like, oh shit, yeah, that's like all over that whole series. And I read all of those books as a kid, and it didn't do me any harm. I mean, if it did anything, maybe it subconsciously clued me in a little bit. You know, for me, it kind of prepped me for adulthood to like think more like this and understand these things and be able to recognize it.
Yeah. It's that book series in particular is like a soft disclosure for sure on what's actually going on.
Like.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not really soft either. To me, it's pretty blatant. Like using
even
sacrificing children's to open portals, like they do that.
And the newest series that they did with it.
What series?
They did the newest series.
Oh, HBO.
His Dark Materials.
Yeah, I watched it.
Yeah, it was blatant.
It's disturbing. Yeah.
Yeah, blatant. Like if you don't see what it is, it's really crazy.
Yeah.
But I read those books. I watched them all that stuff.
That dude was knighted, that author, which is always a clue, right? Who they knight.
Really?
Yeah.
By
Queen Elizabeth. She was Queen Elizabeth knighted, correct.
Because there's the queen who knights people, and then there's like there actually is the authors of Knights of the Round Table, King Arthur. There's like actually a thing. It's like a thing. So it feels like there's two sides, like that knight people, like a dark side and a light side, that knight people.
Right.
And like and people don't know that still exists, but it still exists. It's a thing. Like that's what they call it, Knights of the Round Table, like King Arthur's Knights. And that's a thing. So it's pretty weird, pretty wild stuff. And then you've got the queen side, the royal family, which is like the satanic side of it.
Right.
Of that. And she knights. So he was knighted by the queen?
Correct. Before she died. Yep. So that tells me that he got some actual like direct intel for the stories. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It tells me either he was part of those circles and he knew about it, and either he just knew about it and he wrote about it because nobody's ever going to catch on, and he got rich from it, and he was told to do it, or he knew about it and he didn't like it and he tried to write books like that for young people to tell them what to watch out for.
I mean, it could be all
either
of that.
way.
Yeah.
It could be all. Yeah.
Like I kind of view Aldous Huxley that way. Like, Brave New World is very dystopian, but it's also a disclosure. But like some say that he espoused those ideas, those eugenics ideas, but like at some point it could be column A, column B. It could be all like both, that they're warning as well as, and also they're aware of natural law. You know, they need to
tell
let
us.
out in some fashion what's actually happening, because I think that's part of their sorcery, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it could just be that too. Like, they have to tell us. We just have to be smart enough to understand what they're telling us.
Right.
That's
Like,
influence.
Yeah.
That's why influence doesn't matter to me. I don't care how influential people can be, or how, I just, like, that stuff doesn't affect me. Like, it doesn't matter to me what people say. It only matters what people do. So yeah, it could just be that they have to tell us. So you've got somebody like him who is disclosing what they're doing, and he's just another rat, Satanist scumbag. And who knows what else? Possibly, maybe not. We don't know. But they do that. They have to tell us what they do. And it's up to us whether we're going to allow it or not. We could stop allowing it, but that would take action. It would take doing something, not just like thinking and feeling we wanted to change.
Exactly.
And, it's like the Nazi tactics, like what they do. They say, get it with the kids. Start with the kids. That's what they did. And that's how they got an entire generation of soldiers who would just do that shit. They started training young boys in the SS when they were like 8 years old. They had like a whole Boy Scout camp for that shit. And then 20 years later, you got World War II and an entire army of children who were taught to be that way.
Right.
Because, I mean, you don't teach a 40-year-old to go. You don't tell a 40-year-old, okay, now you're part of the Nazi army, and we're going to tell you have to go and shoot like old people and like abduct people and take them to camps, and you have to deal with us experimenting on people. Like, you can't tell a 40-year-old to do that, because most of them are going to like, I'm not going to do any of that. Even if they are like conditioned or whatever, whether they're, most people are not going to do that in their 40s. They're just like, no, I'm not going to do that. But you can train a 8-year-old to do that for 20 years.
As a mom of children in their formative years, I'm very aware of what they're planning due to the types of media that age group is currently being exposed to. I really try not to use media. I try to go the middle path. I used to be completely anti-technology, like thinking it was like, there was so much satanic influence in it that I just didn't even bother. And I'm learning now that like, that's not, we need to use technology as a tool. It's just a tool. But anyway, but like, yeah, the co-parent doesn't have that same sense of, so anyway, so I'm aware that like there's a huge transhumanist agenda for that age group, Generation Alpha. I think is what my kids' generation is going to be called, where they are trying to get kids to be comfortable with befriending robots. Like befriending. Yeah. Like there's so much programming, like Paw Patrol, for example, like they'll have like fun robots that you can kind of control, and they can be bad or they can be good. And it doesn't matter because princess programming, because, police authoritarian programming, and, moral relativism programming, all in that show. And then in Transformers, extraterrestrial cyborgs come down and have these big battles in like Godzilla, like in cities, and like, humans are just kind of like there. It's just a lot. It's a lot of just transhumanist stuff going on.
Yeah.
For those kids.
I mean, the way that I kind of combated that, because I thought I can't just like annex technology. I can't annex movies and TV out of people's lives. I mean, I can't shelter, like the way I felt, I couldn't shelter my kid because sheltering children can cause long-term psychological issues in the long run. It can cause problems.
Yeah.
So I had to think about that, and I'm like, okay, how do I deal with all the programming and that kind of stuff that goes on and the influential side of it, because all that's influence, everything that comes out of there, 100% influence, all of it. You don't have to buy it. We don't have to buy it. We don't have to take that as, oh, that's, the gospel truth. It's fiction until proven guilty because it's a movie or it's a TV show, right? So, or fiction until proven true. So what we kind of did is we didn't really not allow our daughter to watch stuff or whatever. There were appropriate things that were appropriate for her in her age group that
Right.
we felt were okay. And if she had questions, we always encouraged her to ask questions about things she didn't understand. And us being the way that we were, where we didn't take it too seriously, anything that comes out of that.
Right.
She would ask us questions. I don't get that. I don't get this. And we would explain it, whatever it was. And she'd be like, oh, okay. And then she'd understand it. And then by doing that, the whatever satanic influence that is potentially coming out of there to do the princess programming, to program boys to be beta males or whatever, or, to promote woke agenda shit, all that stuff. Doing that, she was just like, when you understand what you're looking at, it doesn't affect you.
Right.
It's not something that affects you that way where you just buy it. So that's like why we didn't hold stuff back, and we still let her watch movies that, were kind of dark sometimes, that were appropriate for her age group. She was never really into scary stuff. Like I'm the horror buff in the family. I like poorly done horror movies. Like I'm totally Alfred Hitchcock all the way. She was never really into that kind of stuff, but she was the kind of kids who, like, if say a commercial came on and there was somebody's like boobs on the TV for a moment, I remember this one time, she's like, and she bolts out of the room, and I'm like, what happened? Because I wasn't watching. It was like doing dinner or something. And she's like, I can't go back into the living room and watch the rest of my movie. I'm like, why? As I missed it. I missed whatever it was. And then she's like, oh, a commercial came on, and it was talking about somebody's boobs, and it was probably like a bra commercial or some shit like that. So I'm kind of laughing about it because even in her age, she was like, I don't need to be seeing that. I don't want to see that. She bolts out of the room. So
that's kind of cute.
Yeah, I mean, kids are funny that way, and like when you just explain stuff to them, it's not a mystery, and they don't just buy it in as something, where it doesn't condition them.
Yes.
So they just understood. Like, we watched Beetlejuice with her when she was younger, like probably 9 or 10. Like Beetlejuice, I watched that as a kid. It's a campy movie.
Yeah.
Some people won't watch it they don't let their kids watch it because they're like, oh, it's about death and that's evil and that's like occult stuff and I don't understand that. And I'm like, no. It's just a campy comedy, and yeah, Tim Burton is probably one of them, but that doesn't matter. I mean, so it doesn't matter if you don't let it influence you. I mean, don't let your kids hang out with people like that.
Right.
what does that have to do with the movie?
I totally agree. And I definitely don't, I feel like there's age and stages, right? Like in the beginning, okay, like no screen time. But as now that like my older one's 6, I'm sitting down, we're watching it together. I'm pausing, asking questions. You know, do you think this is real or fantasy? You know, just going through. And I think also the act of pausing, which he hates when I do that, but it like the timing of it, like the programming is like you're interrupting it, you know? So,
I mean, if you explain stuff and you allow them to just ask questions, they will ask questions and then they'll understand and they'll be like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
The Last Unicorn, that's another great example of that. Phenomenal book. One of my favorite books of all time. Wow. Great book for kids. I read that book to Emma when she was probably 6. But there's also a cartoon that was made out of it. But The Last Unicorn is got that in it. The Last Unicorn has trafficking in it.
Wow.
It's got coercion in it. It's got lying in it.
Wow.
But it's a great movie. I'd say that's a great movie for kids, even young kids. It's a great book. If you're gonna like expose children to stuff like this and get them like used to it and have them understand it on the in the allegorical way, because this is allegory. Like you're teaching kids through allegory, through example. Right. That's what the Grimm fairy tales is. That's all allegory. So when you do that and you expose this, like you'll find your children don't grow up. They don't grow up full of fear and they don't grow up conditioned. It's just, you gotta like let go of that fear that we people generally need to let go of the fear that our kids are going to be destroyed, and we need to allow nature to be able to thrive and take its course and understand that people learn through experience. We learn through allegory. We learn through, of course, asking questions, storytelling. We don't learn anything when we're sheltered. Then we grow up into a 40-year-old adults who are afraid of everything, who think the earth is flat. I mean, I'm sorry, but this is like how,
you're very real. I love it.
This is what I see in the world. And like, stop being afraid of everything. Hypochondria is a mental illness. When you're afraid of shit, when you're afraid of knowing things, when you're afraid of how this is going to turn out, when you're afraid of this situation, when you're afraid of raising your kids the wrong way, when you're afraid of getting involved with this or dealing with that, that's all fear-based reaction, and it's about trying to keep control. You're trying to control something and trying to control growth that way and experience and spiritual evolution that way. That's being a control. That's trying to control something that we shouldn't be controlling. You got to let nature be nature too. You got to let people have experience. You got to explain things to young children, or else they're just, it's going to go downhill. It's a bad combination. So
yeah,
it's in hypochondria, like people are developing hypochondria formats, and hypochondria is a mental illness. If you're afraid of everything, if you're afraid of things in the world just because they're there, because they're dark, because they're scary, because they could harm you, because they could harm our kids, that's hypochondria. That's being afraid of shit.
Right.
And it's a mental illness, and it doesn't matter what level it's at. It could be at the point where you're just like kind of afraid of doctors, and you don't know how to deal with that, or you're afraid you won't even leave your house.
Yep.
So we have to make choices, and we have to make grown-up choices. And especially when we have kids, we have to make grown-up choices. We better be making grown-up choices and discerning things properly. I gave Emma a compendium of the Grimm's fairy tales and let's just pull them up.
Okay. By the way, we should probably, after this, end the recording just because my battery's about to die and I need to plug it in.
Yeah, I should probably eat dinner too. Oh yeah, Andersen's fairy tales.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales, Grimm fairy tales. These are dark stories.
Yep.
Original stories are dark, but they're great allegorical lessons for children to learn and read. And it's kind of fun to learn it that way. And I gave her both of those when she was like 9. Cool. She read them all. So, I mean, like this, we can't keep stuff from our kids.
Yeah.
It's not healthy. It's not I don't think it's a good route to go.
Yeah. I've realized that and changed. And as I see my kids go through different age stages, I'm pivoting and moving dynamically for sure. Because I see that. I see the pitfalls of staying in a certain parenting mode. I think certain parenting modes make sense for certain ages, but you just got to go with you got to grow with them.
Yeah. And there's different stages that have different appropriate levels. And you have to be the one to be responsible enough to understand where your kid is at mentally with that and make those calls. You know, I wouldn't have shown Beetlejuice to my 5-year-old, but, you know, I would watch it with her when she was like 9, you know, because she can comprehend what's happening. Like I wouldn't watch like, say, 28 Days Later with my 9-year-old, you know, like it's common sense. Like this kind of stuff is common sense. It should be common sense, but then don't have me tell you. Don't have like people out there in the world. Don't listen to me. Figure it out yourself as adults.
Exactly.
You know, our kids are important and they're worth it, and they're just worth it. Like you're not going to get paid for it. You're not going to be thanked for it. There's no pats on the back. There's no awards. There's no prize for it, but they're still worth it. 100% worth it. Every minute of grief of it.
I'm marveling at what a wonderful mom you are.
Well, she's all grown up now. She's an adult. So now it's her turn.
I'm not ready to say goodbye. I have some time.
Well, we can go, and it's probably late there. 8:30.
It is. Oh, I meant goodbye in terms of like letting them go, the children.
Oh,
they become adults.
Your kids are still like babies.
Yeah, I don't know, but like, do you get like empty nests or something?
Yeah, I mean, in the sense where I'm like, Emma, I don't care what time it is, night or day, I will kill them. And she's like, Mom, I'm not calling. I just need you to come pick me up. I'm like, what happened? Who did it? I kill him. Like, no, Mom. I just need to ride home. Like, you know. So I kind of feel that kind of way. Sometimes that energy where you're just like, what happened? Like it could be the middle of the afternoon. I'm like, what happened? You know, like Who did it? I'll kill him. It's like, no, Mom. I was just calling to tell you you got a piece of mail. Like, oh, God.
Oh,
You know, so it's kind of that dynamic now. And I'm like, 'cause she's 19, so she's still kind of like a baby to me, but she's an adult. She's got her own bills and her own life.
wow.
So I must have done something normal because she's 19 and she's got her own independent life and her own stuff going on and doesn't need me for everything. And she doesn't need me to call me, to tell me, to ask me for stuff. She can just call me and make sure I'm still alive. Cause now I don't know. It just gets weird when it kind of shifts for a little while when they get older. But when, you know, they're little, you know, those years are awesome. And then they grow old. And then, you know, it's kind of awesome though, like watching them be old, like, or being adults and, you know, capable. And you're just like, I didn't fuck it up too bad.
Oh,
All right. I did it. Awesome. You know, like that should be reward enough, I think.
yeah.
You know, for parents where you like if our kids can come out like that smidgen a little bit better than we are, that's the best reward I could possibly have asked for.
Yeah, man. I mean, it sounds like, you know, isn't that the goal, right? So that they don't have to do all this crazy shadow work at the end of it, you know? Like just giving them that like clean slate in a way.
Yeah. I mean, like, cause sometimes she just corrects me and I'm like, oh yeah, that doesn't make sense. And and you know, like that's where she's at now. Like she can call me, like if I say something like that doesn't, and I'm like, maybe it doesn't make sense, you know, and that's kind of awesome to have that. It's awesome that she does that. I like that because it means that she grew past me. And
okay, I know we have to go soon, but I really want to ask you this because I talked to one of my friends, Corey Endrelot, who's a young Truth and Freedom podcaster. And I was like, how do I get my kids to be like doing the great work, like so young, like you? And he's like, don't pressure them. He's like, don't make it a big deal. Just, you know,
yeah,
expose them to natural law and then they'll come to it. Don't make it a dogma. Don't force it on them. Do you agree with that?
100%. Do not push our kids. We should not be pushing our kids towards any path because the thing is, again, that's free will. That's personal choice. That's personal responsibility. That's, you know, we cannot control other people. And even when our kids turn into adults, we want them to be a certain way, but we can't control them as people. That would be wrong. That would be unethical. So I would agree with that 100%. You know, expose them to it. Make it normal in your household that this is how we practice our life. This is how we behave in the world. And do that by practicing it, you know, leading by example. Again, it's all theory until you show people how it's done, until you practice it yourself and lead by example. Otherwise, reading a book like the Trivium, that's all theory until you put it into practice.
Right.
It doesn't matter until it's actually in the world and you're putting it into an action. And leading by example, just behaving a certain way, conducting yourself a certain way, practicing this type of, you know, mindset, like practicing it within your own environment your kids are going to see that and they're going to like, this is like normal behavior. This is what normal people do. And some people are like, oh, that's very manipulative. It's not really. It's just your kids will copy you. Your kids don't listen to what you say. Your kids listen to what you do. They copy what you do. They don't listen to what we say. They copy our actions. That's always been a thing. That is like an ancient thing that people just know. Like you lead by example. That's why that's a saying. Right. And others will follow. Not just your kids, but strangers, people in your environment will see you do that and start to behave that way because they see that as, oh, this seems like a normal thing. They start to do it. I've seen that happen because I've worked in the community a lot, and then you can see how people change from one way to the other. It's kind of awesome. But your kids, yeah, I would say don't force them into anything.
Sure.
Because, I mean, we have to give them enough space and respect to allow them to understand what we're saying to them and what we're showing them with our behavior, and allow them to have the space and have enough respect for them to think that they can understand what I'm doing. And give them that time to figure it out and they'll just start behaving like that, like it's normal. Because it is normal. And then they'll think it's weird when other people don't act like that. And they're like, what are you doing?
Right.
They will start to see it. You won't even have to decondition them because they'll see it in other people's behavior. So, I mean, absolutely 100%. Don't force your kids. Don't make it a big deal. Don't make it like all about that or else, because that's the same shit that all these other institutions do. Or else, like half of the drug epidemic that we have is because they forced people to like not have it, and then like they just basically were trying to force people, you're not allowed to have this or that or whatever. And so everybody was like, oh, you can't tell me what to do. I'm going to go do it anyway. Because they were like they weren't giving people the choice. You know, like Ireland, like everyone sees it as a lot of people see it as a country that's just like full of alcoholics, but it's not really. Like, I mean, there's kids drinking there when they're like 16. So they don't care. Like, you know, it's not a big deal. It's not like, you know, sneaking, you know, some alcohol out of your parents' cupboard is not a big deal to them. They like don't even have to do that. They can go to the local pub and get a beer. And so they're not drinking all the time. And it's not a big secret. And it's not like something you're like hiding and getting away with, you know. It's like a totally different thing. Not that I think 16-year-olds should be drinking, but it's just that psychology in it too. Like when you think something is normal, and that plays on people, and you try to force something on people, they will almost always rebel against it. They'll go the opposite. Because really subconsciously, people don't want to be controlled.
Right.
We don't want to be controlled. We allow ourselves to be controlled, but we don't want to be controlled. And we push against it. That's how you get rebellion. So absolutely, I would say that don't force it on kids. Just lead by example. Behave like a moral person, and your children will understand that this is how we behave if we want to be correct in our behavior. I mean, they'll just learn it, you know?
And I think, you know, to close, this is not limited to parents with children. This is our work with the populace, right? Like, how do we convince them? How do we persuade them? How do we attract them to these concepts? We just have to, I mean, obviously we're teaching, we're exposing, but leading by example there as well, you know, through our actions for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, this was awesome. I'm so glad we did this. It was very impromptu podcast recording. I thought we were going to talk about the book, but this is a great conversation. So
just chit-chatting for a few hours and getting all crazy. Well, I'm getting crazy because people piss me off. But I understand them, but I don't. But yeah. So that was awesome. Great. It was a great chat, Jerry. Thank you.
Cool. So yeah, I'll be sure to post this tonight. That way people can be aware that Cat Waters is coming on to your show tomorrow. So
yep, Cat Waters. And there's a copy, there information in the chat room as well.
Yes, I'll be sure to link that.
Yeah, cool. And then let me know where you post it and I'll share it.
For sure. All right. Have a good night.
Awesome. Bye. Bye, John.
I'll tell him in the other room. Bye.
Later.